We been down. Access my regular. I'm talking things we been now. Things we been now. Ooh, we been down. Access my regular. I'm talking things we been now. It's my regular. I'm talking things we been now. Things we been now. Ooh, we been down. It's my regular. I'm talking things we been now. Things we been It's my regular. I'm talking things we've been now. Things we've been now. Ooh, we've been down. It's my regular. I'm talking things we've been now. It's my regular. I'm talking things we've been now. Things we've been now. Ooh, we've been down. It's my regular. I'm talking things we've been now. Things we've been I
Oh, my bad, G. I forgot you got another channel that you was doing the other story on. I got confused. My bad. I was about to text you that, but then I was like, I'm already on the stream, so I might as well tell her.
She already read. What are you talking about, Trey? Good
I
morning.
hit text you was like
I mean,
Henry Dickens. I thought you was done with that because I remember the other story we was on with the light skinned nigga and his niece.
oh,
And
hold
then I
on.
remembered you be on. You got like 11 channels, and you be doing the other crimes on the other channel.
I don't have 11 channels. Hold on. Oh, what the hell is this playing? Hold on, y'all. I got too many devices in front of me. Hold on.
Cause
Okay.
she got 11 channels.
Trey, I only have 3 channels, Trey, and you got to keep up now. Now, this case has a verdict. Is the verdict's been read? We saw the verdict and everything. We just listening out the testimony because um I don't know. Has he been sentenced? Now I'm getting confused. I don't think he's been sentenced yet. We're gonna get into that as well, but No, we're not finished with this. We're just listening out the testimonies. We on day 11, and I think there was like 14 days, I believe. And we were gonna listen out, listen to the rest of the testimony or whatever. We got the verdict. The verdict is in or whatever. But I said I was gonna see this out. I was gonna see it to the end, and I am. So anyway, good afternoon, y'all. I'm talking about good morning. It's damn well into the afternoon. As y'all can tell, I am all discombobulated. I slept in today. When I mean I slept in today, I slept in today, y'all. Actually, I was up to like 8 a.m. like all night. I was up to 8 a.m. and I actually dozed off a little after 8, and then I woke up at about 12 something. My sleep pattern was off, then it got back on track. Now it's off again. So y'all just bear with me, okay? As y'all can tell with these late lives, because I usually try to do this between 8 and 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm all fucked up.
Get your sillies. She is at her running amok.
Yeah, she is. I love it. You leave my feelings alone, and I love my feelings. Don't do it. Don't do it. Good morning, y'all. Let me do a quick roll call. I can do a quick roll call. We ain't got many in here. The same old faithful supporters. Hey, E. Brooks. Thank you, E. Brooks. Hey, Miss Carla. Hey, Mookie. Hey, Melissa. Okay. All right. So listen, we're gonna get into it. Like I said, this is day 11 of the Dinkins testimony. Okay. We on the main channel right now. Try to get it together. We was on the other channel, for them days last week. But anyway, we're gonna listen, y'all. Let me pull it up for y'all. I think I got it. I think I got it pulled up. For those that want to listen, like I said, this is day 11, y'all. Um, let's see. Okay. All right. So apparently, let me see something. Let me show them on day 11 because I see that damn interrogation again. Why is the check not showing up? Hold on, y'all. I mean the information. But I'm sure this is day 11. I pulled it up before I came on. All right. So let's get into it. Y'all got any questions? Ask them in the chat. If not, we're just gonna listen. Let me make sure I got it sped up so we can kind of get through as much as we can. It is sped up. Okay. All right. So let's go, y'all. Mm-mm-mm-mm. I know they ain't watching this. Oh, hold on. Let me see. Y'all, they is watching the interrogation again. I guess this is the cop that did the interrogation, so they going back to that. All right, let's listen.
Okay. Before we get started, is it Jar? J-E-R-O-D? What's your middle name, Jared?
Samuel.
And then Brinkman?
B-R-I-N-K.
What's your date of
No,
birth?
just Brink.
Oh, just Brink?
Yeah.
Okay. What's your date of birth, Jared?
1/17/75.
And an address for you?
2918 182nd Street, DeWitt.
And your phone number is 468-0641?
Yep.
Where are you working at?
Linwood Mining.
What's that?
Linwood Mining.
Linwood Mining. Yep, right down there in Buffalo.
Yeah.
All right, so we got a phone call from Major Conduct up in Clinton County that you had some information that you wanted to share with us. So I just ask that you go through and tell me everything that you can possibly remember from this incident.
Okay. I need to go south of my house in Humiston until I get to.
Y'all let me know if the speed is too fast where you can't understand. Okay, let me know. Hey, room shaker. Good afternoon. Happy Monday, sweetie. Y'all let me know if it's too fast.
Whatever the hell it is. And I take that gravel road that goes around the backside of Coon House.
Okay.
And then I jump onto the 4-lane and head south.
Okay.
So I got on the 4-lane and I went about a half mile around the corner.
Wait a minute. This the dude I think that pulled him out the I'm gonna slow it down a little bit because this is the dude, y'all. I think this is the dude that pulled him. I'm gonna put that on normal because I want to hear this.
And a black man jumped out in the road in front of me and waved his arms. And I kind of checked all the other areas, so I didn't know where he came from. And I didn't see anybody else, so I stopped. He said he was stuck in the ditch.
Okay.
And asked if I could pull him out. So he got in my truck. I took him down about another half mile. We turned around the median and come back up, got off of Coon House there and went down in front of Coon House and took a left onto the gravel road.
Okay.
And there I seen his car in the ditch. And it was towards the south end of that pond. It was probably 150 yards off of the blacktop road, the old highway.
Okay.
So, and his trunk was facing to the he was skewed just a little bit, probably to the west, northwest a little bit.
Okay.
He wasn't exactly west. And he dropped the right rear tire. I don't think he dropped the left rear tire off the ground or off the edge of the ditch. And I just spun around and backed up to him. I had short chain in my truck.
Okay.
And pulled him out. He wanted to give me $100. I said, no, I don't need money.
Okay.
I said, just help somebody else out.
Okay.
And away we went. But after thinking about it, I'm pretty sure it had a tan color interior and it had a console in there.
Okay.
The car was extremely clean inside.
Okay.
But it was a tan leather interior. I'm not mistaken, maybe it had a moonroof.
Okay.
But the interior lights were on, and it was like 4:30 in the morning, 4:45. But I'm pretty sure he was wearing a darker shirt, like a black shirt, and white shorts and white shoes.
Okay.
I just had a hard time seeing him on the highway because all I seen was the white shorts.
Yeah.
And they're up in the air.
Yeah.
So you're trying to figure out
Sun's still not up.
what the hell is that out on the road in front of me?
Yeah.
And as I got closer, I got a figure. So.
Okay.
But I do remember him. I asked him what the hell he was doing. Coming back from Clinton to Davenport. I'm almost 99% positive that's what he said. He was leaving Clinton, going to Davenport. And that's pretty much all I remember. And I, the life of me, try to figure out what the date is.
Okay.
Or even somewhere close.
Okay. Do you remember any of the weather by chance?
It was cooler.
Okay.
And I thought, no,
Cooler because it was in the morning, or cooler because?
I think just temperature cooler.
Okay.
Probably around the 40 to 45 degree range.
Okay.
I'm like, you're cold to be out here in shorts.
Yeah.
I remember thinking that.
Okay. Do you remember that it was at 4:30 in the morning?
It was, right around there, within 15 minutes.
Okay. When you said, so you came down from your house and then headed west past Kunau?
Yeah.
And then got on the 4-lane
Yeah.
south?
Yeah.
Okay. And he did not come out until you did not see him until you were south on Highway 61?
Yeah, he was out on Highway 61.
Okay.
Probably a half mile south of that intersection.
Okay. He got in your truck. And you guys swung back around.
Yeah.
Do you remember hairstyle or anything like that on him?
I don't remember much. Just dark hair. It was fairly short.
Okay.
He was a bigger dude. He wasn't fat by no means.
Okay.
I mean, he looked like he was pretty well
Stocky?
stocky,
Okay.
but he wasn't fat by no means.
Okay. When he was in your car, did you smell anything that kind of smelled out of the ordinary?
No, he smelled like perfume.
Smell like perfume?
Not perfume,
Or cologne?
cologne type.
Okay.
It didn't smell like my stinky truck.
Okay. And you said when he was wearing shorts, like, are you talking like gym shorts or jean shorts?
I
or
want to say they're like white denim jean shorts.
white denim jean shorts?
That just sticks in my head.
Okay. Any designs on that you can tell?
No.
Okay.
But no, they don't. I don't think they had a flower pattern on them or something, kind of blue design. For some reason, I see some kind of blue design in the shorts, like they're screen printed or something.
Okay.
But for some reason, I just got like white jean shorts.
Okay.
Like
Okay. And then the T-shirt, was it all plain black?
I don't remember.
Just remember a black T-shirt.
That was dark one.
Okay.
I don't remember anything about that. And I really wasn't even going to call because the information wasn't that great. And that's why I beat my head up and I went to work this morning and I went to my phone and dug, trying to find a text message in case I text somebody that I'd seen them so I can remember the exact date. But I do remember it was.
Was he wearing a do-rag by chance? Do you remember?
I don't think so.
Okay. When he got back to the car,
when I looked at him, I did not suspect anything like of an abnormal person.
Okay.
I mean, like a do-rag or I think he was wearing a little bit of jewelry, but it wasn't flashy or anything like that, I don't think.
Okay. Do you remember the shoes at all? Just white shoes? Maybe white shoes?
Like I said before, I get up, I make my coffee, I get dressed, and I'm out. I was probably literally from the time I got up to there, 25 minutes.
Okay. Still a little sleepyhead?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I didn't know enough to kind of look around and stuff before I even bother to stop to see if there's anything else going on.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
I'm not going to stop in the middle of the road for.
No, absolutely. So after you picked him up and circled back around, did you take that first right when you turned onto that gravel road in front of Kunow? So did you go in front of Kunow or did you swing back around Kunow? And then you said the entrance to the pond.
There's an entrance to the pond on the north side, I think, a little gravel entrance.
Okay.
It was probably 75 to 100 yards south of there.
Okay. Okay.
I drove by there this morning and I'm like, yep, it was probably within 20 foot either direction. Right here is where I pulled them out.
Okay. Because I remember there's two entrances. One looks like one where like side by side their ATVs go up, and the other looks like where a car would go down.
That one the car went down would probably be on the north side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was on the one where the ATVs?
No, he just dropped off the ditch and I didn't look real close, but
Okay.
I did walk around the side of his car and I just seen the one tire was dropped off.
Okay.
And he had spun down into the gravel a ways trying to get out. But I think that's why I seen the interior of the car.
Okay.
The color of it.
And the interior, what color was the car?
I'm almost positive it was maroon.
Maroon. And the make and model?
I'm pretty sure it was a maroon. I can guarantee it was an Impala.
Okay, guarantee it's an Impala.
I guarantee.
Okay.
For some reason, there's a charcoal gray, but for some reason, it's maroon.
Okay.
And when my buddy was asking me that, because when I was over at his house last night, I said, you know what's weird about them putting that body up there or whatever? I said, last fall, and I said, I can't remember the date. I said, I pulled a black man out of the ditch there in the morning, like 4:30 in the morning. He's like, well, what kind of car was it? At first, I said Malibu. I'm like, no, it was an Impala. He says, what color was it? I said, it was maroon. I mean, I'm not even thinking about it. And I have not seen that flyer because I don't watch the news and I don't go around anywhere.
So you didn't really know anything about what's been going on for the past 8 months?
I had no previous viewing of any of that stuff.
Okay.
You know, I heard about things. Possibly they were looking in the clear right after it first happened, and that's the only thing I heard.
Okay.
So that flyer that his wife sent me when he showed it to me, that was the first time I ever.
First time you ever seen the car?
Yeah.
Oh, on printed or in the news?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I had never seen that.
Okay. Did you touch his car at all? You know, or did you
I probably couldn't. I hooked the chain up on the right front.
On the right front tire?
No, there's a little hole in the frame.
Okay.
Right in front of the lower control arm.
Okay.
I could real easily put my hand on the hood, and it probably would have been my right hand, and I reached underneath on the cradle.
Okay.
And hooked it up, or I hooked the side, or touched the side of the fender with my left hand when I was getting up, one of the two.
Okay.
Do you have the car? Oh.
Yeah.
I would like just to walk by the right side of that car right now, and that would probably refresh so much of my memory.
Yeah. There was no one else in the car, or was there someone else in the car? No? Okay. And
I don't
no,
think there was even anything on the seats or anything. There was a white aux cord for a phone plugged into the cigarette lighter, but that car was pretty much, it was immaculately clean.
okay. And no, did you ever open the door or anything like that to the car?
No.
No, okay.
He got it in the left side, obviously, when I pulled him a little bit. I pulled up right behind me.
Yeah. Did you ask him if he had called anybody for any help or anything like that? No. Okay. And the only thing that he said was that he was on his way from Clinton to Davenport, but ended up 15 miles or 5 miles north of Duluth.
5 miles north of Duluth. 4 miles.
Okay. Have you ever seen a lot of people back in that area?
Maybe during the day, kids messing around or something like that, but.
Yeah.
And I don't ever take that gravel road because the other one I'm straight on, there's no stop sign, and it just curves around.
Okay.
The only reason why I went on that road is because I picked him up.
Okay. When after you pulled him out and you were leaving, did you see which direction he went? Do you remember?
No.
Okay. Did he follow you to Davenport?
I took pretty fast. He went that way.
Well, I mean,
No, I don't recall.
Okay.
At all.
Okay.
No.
So did you pull him out and then would you have been heading north after you pulled him out, or were you heading back south on the gravel?
Back south.
South on the gravel.
And I went past front of Kuhnhaus and got back on the 4 lane again.
Okay. And you didn't see? Was he still there when you left?
No, I'm pretty sure after I unhooked the chain, he wanted to pay me for it.
Yeah.
And I distinctly remember him. I'll give you $100. I'll give you $100. He said that many times. And then after I unhooked the chain, he's like, here. He went to hand me $100, and I'm like, no, I don't need your money.
Okay. Okay. But don't remember which way he went from there.
No, I'm pretty sure. I know he followed me
Okay. I followed you out
to the stop sign. Which way he went off of that?
Okay. Okay. I'm trying to think of anything else.
Man, he gave me your business card or something. If I remember anything. But like I said, I went to work. I told everybody I damn near hit the guy on the road.
Yeah. So he just just jumped out and right out in front of you?
No, he was on the edge of the road. You know, he was definitely on the white line or maybe on foot.
Yeah.
On the inside, or it'd be yellow over there.
Okay.
But he wanted me to stop, you know.
And he was acting completely normal?
Completely normal. I mean, he seemed to be fairly well spoken. It didn't seem like much of slang or anything like that. You know, he was very appreciative, and he didn't seem like he was like, oh man, you gotta help me. I just turned the body off. It didn't seem like a person would have to take a frantic stage or anything like that.
So the way his car was, he would have had to pull down around that tree and then was heading back out of that area.
I think he might have pulled forward towards the tree on the east side of the road and went to back up.
Okay.
And he dropped his tire off, the right rear tire off on the west side of the road.
Okay.
Because if I'm not mistaken, he was skewed just a little bit. He wasn't quite perpendicular to the road.
So his trunk was facing the pond?
He was facing west.
Okay. So he would have been facing the pond.
Yes.
Okay. So he would have had to backed up into that area.
Yeah.
And then, okay, he was trying to.
Maybe I'll look and see if it's a field drive there.
So
winter time there, the snowplows would have pushed the gravel over, but you would have seen his tire print on the side of the road where I pulled him out. Even now, if it hadn't been winter.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure he pulled into the side of the road.
Yeah.
You know, when coming against the side of the road and popped up, you would have seen it.
Okay.
But
okay. Was he dry, or his clothes dry, or was he wet, or anything like that?
he was dry.
He was dry. Okay. And just smelled of like an abundance of cologne. No.
Just like somebody that was fairly neat and clean kept. He didn't seem like he was scuzzy, dirty, or anything like that.
Do you remember shoes being dirty at all, or muddy at all, or anything like that?
I don't think so.
Okay. He wanted to give you $100, but was he trying to actually hand you the money?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. If you were to see this guy again, would you be able to recognize him and pick him out?
Boy, I don't know. I only know the best way to do it. If you put 2 of them there, I'm not sure I can pick them out. And if you put 6 of them there, you know, I don't know. If you put 2 guys side by side, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Maybe. Probably I was thinking about that before either. You know, if you started to show me pictures, I think, real honestly, it'd be best to put 6 out first instead of 2.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, he wasn't fat. Seemed like he was very
Well built.
And if you look at the picture, and I don't even want to look at the pictures because I don't want to corrupt my thoughts.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't look at I wouldn't look at any pictures.
Well,
Please. Okay, so this is kind of the area of your house and then Kuno. So I just want to make sure I got this right. So you came down, so.
I love my house. Come down here, the gravel road.
Okay, so you drove right on the north side of Kuno.
Yep, and I probably picked him up right here.
Okay.
And that's where I picked him up, which was pretty much straight across the gravel. So he walked right across here to the 4 lane. And then I probably came down to here, turned around, went back in front of the coonhouse, pulled him out.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, he was somewhere probably right in. Well, he's towards the south side of the trees. I don't think I was right on the edge of the trees on the east side of the road.
Okay.
Probably 20 foot from there.
Okay, so he wasn't near that entrance to that circle drive at all. He was down the road further.
He was down here. I was pretty much straight even with the trees on the east side of the road when I was pulling them out.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense then. Okay. You wanted took off. Okay. This is I don't know if this is. This one's a little bit better. So you picked him up further down here.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll go down there, and then circle right where you believe.
It makes it look a little different. It'd be easier if I was standing on the road. I'm gonna say somewhere between here and here.
Okay.
On the road.
And he was backed in, so the trunk would have been facing that way.
Yes.
Okay. Was the trunk open at all?
No.
Okay. Okay.
No, I probably wouldn't be here if I didn't have any cultivation of that girl missing. You know what I mean?
No. So I mean, obviously you said that you hadn't known about anything that was involved in the disappearance of that girl at all?
Well, I did know a little bit when it first happened.
Yeah.
They're still looking for it. I knew that, but
Okay. You didn't know of any of the involved people or any of the involved vehicles or anything like that?
not a clue. The first time I thought about a room car was last night after my buddy was bumping me, kind of interrogating me, and I come right out and said it.
Yeah. So what was he asking you?
He's just like, we're sitting there having a beer, and I'm like, you know what's weird about them finding that body over there? I pulled a car out there.
So you brought it up?
Yeah, I brought it up. I said, you know what's weird about it is I pulled a car out of the ditch there last fall.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, what kind of car was it? And at first, I'm like, a Malibu? No. I said, it was an Impala. He said, what color was it? And I said, it was maroon. He's like, oh my God. He said, you don't know the maroon Impala? And I said, no, what? Well, that's that girl that's missing. That's they're speculating that's that car.
Mm-hmm.
And then he called his wife, and his wife sent me the text message of that flyer.
Of the flyer?
Flyer with the car on there and two guys on the bottom and her picture.
Yep.
Actually, thank you guys.
Yeah, actually, get that.
Yeah, I'll take it back right here.
Right here, right? This is the same one I have.
Oh, you already had it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Actually, this one, I'll use this one. So use the you can't train drive. So yes.
That's the guy that pulled him out the mud, y'all. That's the guy that pulled him out the mud. He's deceased. So they're using his interrogation video.
Um, there's my card. You have that right now. What time do you have to be at work?
Oh, whenever I want.
Whenever you want.
Basically, I'm there by 5, quarter after 5.
Okay, so you're there by 5 every morning?
Yeah, 5, quarter
Okay.
after 5.
So what time do you usually leave your house?
Usually, I don't know, 4:30.
4:30. Okay. Do we have a direct supervisor that we just verify? Because we're trying to create the timeline of events that happened on that day. So we just kind of want to verify. Obviously, you were probably a little late on that day because you had to stop and pull them out.
I'm a supervisor, so I kind of come and go as I please.
Oh, okay.
Just like now, I just left.
Okay. So do you report to anybody?
Yeah, Mark Clemick, he's my boss.
Mark Clemick?
Yeah.
How do you know how to spell Clemick?
Oh.
I'm guessing it's like KLEMIG.
I'm in here. KLINEK.
MEK. Okay.
You wonder if his phone number.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Uh, 563.
Yep.
340. 5228.
5228. And the guy you were talking to last night having a beer that you were talking with, what's his name?
Joe Adams.
Joe Adams?
Yeah.
Do you have his phone number by chance?
Oh, he's off the deep end. What do you get my phone number for? I'm like, you're the one that told me how to call.
He's not in any trouble, that's for sure.
212-9230.
9230. Okay. That flyer that you got sent, can I see what flyer that is? I know that we've put out a couple different ones.
His wife sent me that. Do you want her?
Okay. So what did you see when you saw that?
He showed me on his phone. My phone was in the truck. He showed me on his phone.
Okay.
I just looked at it as he handed me like this. I'm like, yeah, that's the car. I never even looked at the pictures. And I'm pretty sure it's not that one. And if this guy lost weight, I could possibly say it was him.
Okay. Okay. So as soon as you saw that car, you're like, that was the first time you saw that car since you pulled it out of the ditch?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And I got to change.
What's your question, Melissa? You said, how did he pass Truth or anybody? I don't understand your question, Melissa. Ask it again, sweetie. I'm not understanding what you're asking.
Being at home, I'm pretty sure, depending upon where the wrecker hooked up, I could see exactly where it hooked up to it.
Okay.
I mean, just in front of the right front wheel, there's a T-slot. I used to reload cars, so I know there's a T-slot where you hook into. And I didn't hook up on the right front of the car. And it was pretty short chain. It was probably only 6 feet long, so I was pretty close to the car.
Okay.
When I backed up to it, because I knew that's the only thing I had in the truck.
Okay. So there's a couple other things that I'm going to ask of you to help us further this investigation. Okay. I'd like to take you down and show you the car, the maroon Impala. Then I'd also like to take you back out to Kunow so you can specifically show us where you pulled him out.
Today?
Yeah, today. Yeah, today.
So, no, this is no big deal.
Okay. And while we're doing that, we'd like to forensically download your phone just because our computers have more capability of pulling stuff out that you may or may not have deleted and not know about.
Oh, I don't believe that.
Okay.
Just recently I started deleting text messages, but
We'd like.
Oh, okay. I think it was from natural causes. I don't think it was anything like, I think he passed from like natural causes because it wasn't like because if he had been like killed or anything, it probably would have been an investigation into it because he was a witness. But I'm not for sure. But I'll try to Google it and see. But I think it was from natural causes.
Like to just do that for our records going forward.
So you'd be able to pull the GPS on my phone when I turn around.
Yeah, we'd be able to pull stuff like
I
that.
can't believe you couldn't come up with GPS on anybody's phone in there.
Yeah. So
you'd be able to come up with the name. All right,
yeah, and that's kind of why we want to take you up there, so you can like specifically show us like where you picked them up at, where you pulled the car out at, and all that stuff. And while we're doing,
do you want to go up there?
like right now, we leave from here like right now.
I was gonna say, because if we did a couple hours later, I'd just stay home because I'm halfway there.
We would take you up there and bring you right back. So,
Okay.
and then while we're going down and showing you the car and then taking you up there, we'd have our guys download your phone real quick so it'd be done when you got back.
Oh, I can't leave without my phone, but that's just for work.
Yeah.
How long would it take to download?
It all depends on how much you have on.
Since it's taking my wife's nudie pictures off of there.
We're not in it for that. Trust me. I'm sure you can find better ones otherwise. Yeah, we're not in it for that. So
I can leave my phone with him right now and we can run down to the car quick.
yeah. Is there a passcode on your phone?
Yeah.
What's the passcode?
1233.
1233. Okay. Hang out. I have to go get someone that's going to come with me because it's going to be two of us that go, and then we'll get this moving and we'll take you down to the car and get this done and over with, and hopefully have you out of here by 12 o'clock. Yeah, it shouldn't take that long. All right. Hang tight to me, dude.
Melissa, he died in June of 2023 from a heart attack. His name was Henry. Hold on. His last name was Brink. Let me see what his first name was. I know his last name was Brink, but he died in June of a heart attack.
Pictures and possible shorts. See if those jog your memory at all.
Mhm.
What?
I told you white with blue on them.
Yep.
Did
Those are the shorts?
Yes. I'm pretty sure. I don't recall them shoes though.
Okay.
But like I said, I already told you before, I don't know the shoes. But
Yeah.
I said white shorts with possibly blue screen print.
Yep.
Like some kind of design.
Yep.
So I'm not sure I remember a tank top, but
Okay.
yeah.
But those shorts you're pretty certain on.
I never seen the backside of it, like
Yeah.
Stefan said.
But
I don't remember him being that bigly built. Like I said, he was big, but I don't think he wasn't like portly big.
Yeah.
I mean, he looked like he had a big frame.
Okay.
But I said that to you, I
Yeah.
do remember possibly some kind of blue screen printing on it.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Perfect. I'm gonna get.
So I wasn't too far off.
No, not at all. I'm gonna get the keys. We're getting out of here. All right.
All right.
Detective Johnson, let's put State's Exhibit 38 up there on the board. I'd like to direct your attention to that portion of the conversation where you were having Mr. Brink identify locations where, first of all, he had that initial contact with this black gentleman along Highway 61.
Okay.
Does that give us a good perspective there, or would another map give us a better perspective?
That gives a fairly good perspective of the route that he took, yeah.
All right, go ahead and show us on State's Exhibit 38.
This one right here.
Sure, oh, perfect, yes. All right, so go ahead and show us again.
This one, where he comes from, the east heading west, turns down onto 61, then does essentially the U-turn back up in front of Kunow, and then back behind Kunow and on that.
Okay, thank you. When Mr. Brink had referenced going down a half mile further after he had picked up the black gentleman and having turned around at the median, is there medians along Highway 61 where you can utilize that and to head back north?
Yes,
And was that your understanding of what he was explaining?
yes, it was.
All right. Now, let's go to State's Exhibit 41. Utilizing this particular aerial map, can you go back to the area of 270th Avenue and help us understand where he was locating that vehicle, the maroon Chevy Impala, along that roadway when they came down there?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
It would have been somewhere in this area of the property.
All right. For purposes of our written record, relative to the access road, and that would be that steep access road that would take you to the pond, would that have placed him further north or further south?
It would have been further south. The access road to the pond is right here.
All right. And just so that we're clear about the orientation of the vehicle, was the vehicle facing north or south, or was it across 270th?
It would have been across. The trunk would have been facing west, northwest, and then front of the car would have been facing east, southeast.
During your conversation with Mr. Brink, was there any discussion about how it appeared the gentleman was trying to do a three-point turn when he got? As for the portion of the vehicle that got stuck off of the roadway, help us understand what he was describing there.
The car would have been back up here, and it would have been the back right tire would have been off the gravel road here, where there's an edge.
Okay, go ahead and take your seat. Detective Johnson, on July 9th, in the evening of 2020, was there a significant rainstorm here in the Davenport area?
I believe so, yes.
And then even when we had gone up there to recover the body, had the weather been fairly inclement during, well, no, I take that back. Okay. So had the weather been fairly inclement through the evening of July 9th and going to the early morning hours of July 10th?
I believe so, yes.
When you were up there at the time that Breasia's skeletal remains were recovered, what is it that you, well, I don't even have to ask you that. I'm going to backtrack. Did you drive up there with Mr. Brink on March 24th? Is that when you met with him?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Describe what happened when you drove up there on March 24th with Mr. Brink.
Mr. Brink was able to describe the location of where he remembers pulling out the maroon Impala.
Okay. Now, did you have a chance to look at the shoulder along the area of 270th Avenue?
Yes, I did.
How would you describe the shoulder relative to the traveled roadway?
There's probably it's very short, narrow, and then there's probably about I would say a foot and a half drop off from the gravel to the edge of the road.
Is that distinctly different from what we typically see if we're driving along the highway and we see just a flat, level surface that would constitute the shoulder in a lot of instances?
Yes.
And so having been up there and viewed that, was it easy to understand how a vehicle, if it backed off the roadway, could get easily stuck?
Yes, it is.
Were you aware of the search warrant that had been obtained for the maroon Chevy Impala to drop the gas tank and determine how much gas was left in the tank?
Yes, I was.
And how were you familiar with that circumstance?
I believe I authored that search warrant.
Certainly. And then by virtue of the car being placed up on a lift, were you aware of additional findings that were made up underneath the vehicle itself within the frame of the vehicle?
I believe I was made aware of possibly some soil that they had been located there.
Okay. And were those soil samples collected?
Yes, they were.
Now, there was something specifically that Mr. Brink mentioned seeing when he looked into the maroon Chevy Impala. What was it he described seeing?
It was a white aux cord that was plugged into a cigarette lighter.
What is a aux cord?
It's a phone or it's a cord that you can plug into your car and then plug in your phone to play music.
All right. Additionally, when Mr. Brink was talking with you about this black gentleman offering him $100 for pulling him out, in your conversation with him, did Mr. Brink speak to the man actually trying to hand him money?
Yeah, he stated on numerous occasions the man attempted to hand him $100 in money.
Okay. Your Honor, may I approach the witness? What's been marked as State's Exhibits 104-1 through 104-3. May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm handing you what's been marked as State's Exhibits 104-1 through 104-3. Do you recognize that group exhibit?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize that group exhibit?
These are the photographs that I showed Mr. Brink during our interview.
104-1. What specifically is that exhibit?
That is showing his residence compared to where Kunau is and where he picked up the gentleman.
104-2.
That's a close-up of the area around Kunau where he marked where the vehicle that he pulled out of the ditch was.
104-3.
That is a picture of Mr. Binkins leaving a store at 3:30 in the morning.
Would that be the quick shop where video surveillance footage was collected after he left the apartment complex at 3:30 a.m.?
Yes, it would be.
All right. And does 104-1 and 104-2 have markings on it to indicate locations that were being talked about specifically as it relates to the maroon? 104-3.
No objection. Those exhibits will be admitted.
May I publish, Your Honor?
You may.
Give me a moment here. Okay. Now, as we look at State's Exhibit 104-1, to the left side of the diagram, and if you could use your pointer that you have right behind you, is Highway 61 shown on this aerial map?
Yes, it is. It's right down here where it says the Vineyard and Winery.
Okay. And does it have the highway insignia listing the number of 61?
Yes, it does.
All right. Now, can you show us on this map what would constitute the area of Kunau implement, specifically where you would turn off Highway 61 onto 212?
Kunau is located right here at 212, right above where this X is.
There's been a description for the parcel of land that Kunau is located on, and it was described as essentially a pie-shaped piece of property. Would that be an apt description?
Correct, that would.
All right, so if you could, then show us what is 212, that becomes 210, show us 270th, and then show us 218th, or what would be Old Highway 61.
So this whole area would be right through here.
Okay. Which of those paved roads is 212?
It would be the road to the north here.
Which is 270th?
270th is, I believe, this one that goes north and south behind Kunau.
And which is 218th, or what a lot of people would recognize as the Old Highway 61?
It'd be this road coming straight down here.
All right. Are there any markings that were placed on this map as we look at it?
Yes, there is.
And then can you show us where those markings are located at?
The first marking up here in the right-hand corner, that would be where Mr. Brink lives. And then this marking down here just south of Kunau would be right about where Mr. Brink said that he picked up the mail.
All right. As to our written record, have you put some type of red dot on the map with Mr. Brink's address?
Yes, I have.
What is that address that's listed?
2918 182nd Street in DeWitt, Iowa.
And then the second marking, was that something that you imprinted, or was it something that was placed on it by a pen?
It was placed on by a pen.
Okay, and so how has that location where the vehicle was across the roadway marked on State's Exhibit 104-1?
With an X right here down the bottom of the picture.
Let's go to State's Exhibit 104-2. In this particular aerial image, have you zoomed in so that we've got a better perspective of Highway 61 in the area of Kunau implement?
Yes, we do.
All right. Now, are there any markings on this particular exhibit?
Yes, there are two.
Explain.
The first one would be where Mr. Brink picked up the mail. And then these markings right here on 270th Avenue would have been where he said that he pulled the vehicle out of the ditch.
Thank you. And then finally, going to State's Exhibit 104-3, describe what we have in this exhibit.
This will be Mr. Dinkins leaving the quick shop wearing the white shorts with the blue pattern on them.
All right. Are these the shorts that Mr. Brink had indicated were like the shorts that he observed the black gentleman wearing?
Yes, it is.
Okay. This particular image, the activity encompassed within it, what day did it happen?
July 10th of 2020.
And was that after 3:30 a.m. when Mr. Dinkins left the Jersey Meadow apartment complex and would have arrived at the quick shop at 3:32 a.m.?
Yes.
Was it your understanding that he actually had gone into the quick shop and made a purchase?
Yes, it is.
And then so is that a still image taken from that video surveillance camera which documented what he wore?
Yes, it is.
With Mr. Brink's clothing description of the black gentleman that he picked up and pulled out of the ditch on the area of 270th Avenue, does that then help to establish a date for when he would have had contact with the black gentleman up there in the area of Kunau implement?
Yes, it does.
There's been testimony offered by Special Agent Richard Fennerin. Do you know in the course of the investigation whether or not the cell phone that you had collected from Mr. Brink, the GPS location information, was that analyzed by Special Agent Fennerin to see if the phone was hitting cell towers in the area of Kunau implement on July 10th at 4:30 a.m.?
Yes, I believe it was.
Okay, thank you. All right. I'd like to approach and show you an additional exhibit. Your Honor, may the record reflect that I'm showing counsel what's remarked to State's Exhibit 105. May I approach?
You may.
I'm showing you what's previously been introduced to State's Exhibit 105. Do you recognize State's Exhibit 105?
Yes, I do.
During the interview, Mr. Brink had shown you an image on his cell phone. What was within that image?
That image contained, as one of the flyers that we had put out during this investigation, it contained a picture of Breasia Trail, the three involved vehicles, and then I believe there was a couple pictures of Henry Dinkins on it.
Okay. Now, in State's Exhibit 105, I would represent to you that we have removed any of the written information relative to that flyer that was put out. But the photographs depicted in the lower portion of State's Exhibit 105, were those the photographs that were in that captured image you saw on Mr. Dinkins' phone?
Yes, I believe it is.
How many vehicles are depicted?
There are three.
Does that include the maroon Chevy Impala?
Yes, it does.
Of the three images, where's the maroon Chevy Impala located?
It's the middle vehicle on the bottom row.
Which of those vehicles does Mr. Brink identify?
The middle vehicle on the bottom row.
Your Honor, may I publish this image?
You may.
And before I take that from you, I want you to look very carefully at Mr. Dinkins' face and around the area of his nose. Do you notice any type of mole in the photographs for Mr. Dinkins?
Yes, I do.
Describe.
It looks like he has a mole, which would be, I believe, on the right-hand side of his face.
Where is it located relative to his nose?
Very close, within centimeters of his nostrils.
May I publish, Your Honor?
You may.
As we look at State's Exhibit 105, where's the maroon Chevy Impala?
It's located here, the middle vehicle in the bottom row.
And as you look at the photographs of Mr. Dinkins, do we see the mole that I've asked you about?
Yes, we do.
Can you show us where that mole is at?
In the middle picture, it's located right here. The far right picture, I believe it's right there. And then very faintly, you could probably see it right there in this last picture.
Mr. Dinkins mentioned, or Mr. I should say Dinkins, Mr. Brink mentioned during his deposition that the black gentleman had a mole on the right side of his face by his nose. Is that consistent with what we see in the photograph?
Yes, it is.
After you finished your conversations with Mr. Brink there in the interview room, describe then what your activity consisted of.
After we're done with the interview, we took him to Service South where we store vehicles. We showed him the vehicle of the maroon Impala down there. He confirmed that was the vehicle that he had pulled out of the ditch. After we left there, we drove him up to Kunau to let him tell us where he pulled the vehicle out and where he picked up the man at.
And did that correlate with what you have noted in our state's exhibit, what was it, 140? Was it 143? Let me just double check that. Yeah, our state's exhibit 104.
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, may the record reflect that I'm showing counsel what's been previously introduced as State's Exhibit 1-1 through 1-11, and then 1-19 through 1-20. May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Looking at State's Exhibit 1-11 through 1-1 through 1-11, look through those and tell me generally what's depicted within those photographs.
These are photographs of the exterior of the maroon Chevy Impala.
State's Exhibit 1-19 through 1-20.
These are images of the interior front passenger compartment, or front seat compartment of the maroon Chevy Impala.
Of the photographs that you're looking through, does it show images of every perspective of the exterior of that maroon Chevy Impala?
Yes, it does.
And does it also show us the white aux cord that Mr. Brink had mentioned to you?
Yes, it does.
His description of there being a tan interior with there being a center console, is that consistent with what we see in this vehicle?
That'd be correct.
Your Honor, may I publish this again?
You may.
Detective Johnson, State's Exhibit 1-1, just briefly for our record, what are we seeing here?
This is the ID card displaying the case name and reason for the call. Of the maroon Chevy Impala.
Do you see any dents on this portion of the vehicle?
No, I do not.
State's Exhibit 1-3,
Be the rear passenger side angle of the maroon Chevy Impala.
do you see any dents in
No,
this area?
No, I do not.
State's Exhibit 1-4,
That'd be the front angle showing down the passenger side of the maroon Chevy Impala.
do you see any dents in this area of the vehicle?
No, I do not.
State's Exhibit 1-5,
The front view going down the driver's side of the vehicle.
do you see any dents in this area of the vehicle?
No, I do not.
State's Exhibit 1-6,
That's the head-on view from the front of the vehicle.
do you see any dents in this area of the vehicle?
No, I do not.
State's Exhibit 1-7,
Be the driver's side of the vehicle.
do you see any dents in this area of the vehicle?
No, I do not.
State's Exhibit 1-8,
Be the front, the rear rear driver's side of the vehicle.
do you see any dents in this area of the vehicle?
No, I do not.
State's Exhibit 1-9, do
That's the rear of the vehicle.
you see any dents in this area of the vehicle?
No, I do not.
State's Exhibit 1-10,
That is the rear passenger side of the Impala.
and are we getting more close-up perspectives around the wheel well areas of the vehicle?
Yes, we are.
You seeing any dents in this area of the vehicle?
No, I'm not.
State's Exhibit 1-11,
That's the front passenger side of the vehicle.
and in this close-up perspective, are you seeing any dents on this vehicle?
No, I'm not.
Now, I want to go to State's Exhibit 119-1, the white aux cord that Mr. Brink mentioned. Can you see that in this photograph?
Yes, I can.
Can you take the pointer and show us?
It is located right here in front of on the floorboard of the driver's seat.
State's Exhibit 1-20, is this a better perspective of that white aux cord?
Yes, it is.
Can you show us with the pointer?
Yes. It's right here.
Thank you. What was the name of Mr. Brink's employer?
Linwood Mining.
And then did he give you the name of his supervisor?
Yes, he did.
What was the name of the supervisor?
Mark Klemick.
Why were you interested in collecting Mr. Klemick's name?
We want to verify what time he may have been at work on that day.
Were steps taken to see if there were any type of time cards that would show when Mr. Brink would have began his shift on the morning of July 10th?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And do they have time records for Mr. Brink?
I don't recall right off the top of my head, no.
But those steps were taken?
Yes, they were.
Thank you. In your conversations with Mr. Brink, at any point in time, did he ever describe for you seeing a dent anywhere on the vehicle?
No, he did not.
I have no further questions of this witness, Your Honor.
Mr. Freeze. You wrote the search warrant that has now been admitted into evidence as State's Exhibit 150-1, correct?
Yes.
And you collected all the information that's contained therein?
Yes.
And how many search warrants do you estimate that you've written?
For this case or overall?
Overall.
Hundreds.
It's very important when you write a search warrant affidavit that it be very accurate, right?
Correct.
And that's because you want the judge who signs the search warrant to have the most accurate person or vehicle, something like that, correct?
Correct.
And also because when you sign that application for search warrant, you're doing so under oath, right?
Correct.
What's that mean to you?
It means that everything is verified as true and correct.
Okay. Now, in State's Exhibit 150-1, you testified to this with Ms. Cunningham, but you included information about Beth Thorpe and her identifying the smell of bleach, right?
Correct.
She came to you with that information?
Yes, she did.
Who else came to you with information about the smell of bleach?
I believe it was only Beth.
Only Beth?
Yes.
No one else?
I believe so, no.
Now, have you reviewed the search warrant that is 150-1 in the record?
Yes.
Okay, so you would have reviewed where you wrote, when detectives, plural, opened the trunk, they, plural, could smell what they, plural, believed to be bleach, right?
Correct.
So that's not accurate.
I don't know how many detectives were down there at the time. I know that Beth Tharp is the one that came and told me what she smelled.
Right, but you put in the search warrant affidavit that more than one detective opened the trunk and they, more than one detective, could smell bleach when they, more than one detective, opened the trunk, right?
That is what I wrote, yes.
And that's not true, is it?
I don't know how many detectives were down there at the time of the search, so I made a general statement of detectives and they, because there was more than just the detective down there, there's also the crime scene tech.
You don't think that's misleading at all?
No, I do not.
You didn't write in there, for instance, when Detective Tharp opened the trunk, she smelled bleach.
No, I did not.
Okay. Now, Mr. Brink, you are aware that he initially thought this vehicle to be a Malibu, right?
In his initial statement, he said he thought it was an Malibu, but was for sure it was an Impala.
Okay, when you interviewed him, right?
Correct.
Are you aware that in his sworn deposition, he went back and said it was a Malibu?
No, I'm not.
Okay. When you interviewed Mr. Brink, we're clear on a couple things. He hasn't varied his story on the fact that this black man was wearing a dark shirt, right?
Correct.
And the video surveillance you showed him from the quick shop with Mr. Dinkins was wearing a white shirt, correct?
Correct.
And you've been involved with all steps of this investigation from July 10th, correct?
Correct.
Remind me of any evidence that we have collected, whether it be video or witness statements, that Mr. Dinkins was wearing a dark shirt on July 10th.
I don't recall that video.
And Mr. Brink was also very clear that when he pulled this black gentleman out of the ditch, that this black gentleman was wearing white shoes, right?
Correct.
And the photograph you showed Mr. Brink of Mr. Dinkins coming out of the quick shop at 3:38 a.m., Mr. Dinkins is wearing gold shoes, right?
That's correct.
And Mr. Brink said, I don't recognize those shoes, right?
Correct.
Right, so those are two factors which are inconsistent with Mr. Brink's story. We can agree on that.
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Brink also said this car's interior was leather, didn't he?
He did, yes.
This car's interior is in fact fabric. Right? Cell phone pinging off towers in that area on July 10th. We can agree on that.
Yes.
Right? But Mr. Brink drives this area every day, right?
I believe so, yes.
So we wouldn't be surprised to see a cell phone pinging off a tower that day, would we?
Correct.
You reviewed Mr. Brink's cell phone pings off towers there pretty much every day of the work week?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. That is a mischaracterization of the record. The phone was evaluated for activity on July 10th.
I'm going to overrule that objection.
Can you read the question back, please?
Could you just rephrase, please?
Are you aware that that cell phone pinged off towers in the area every other day of the work week?
No.
Was it checked to see if it pinged off the cell phone towers in the area every other day of the work week?
I believe our search was only a shortened search for that location data.
For one day?
No, I believe it was 3 days.
Okay. Did it ping off those towers in the same area during those 3 days?
I don't have direct knowledge of what it was on those other 2 days.
So you're telling me that the Davenport Police Department did not want to collect evidence to see if Jared Brink's cell phone would ping off those towers in dates other than the 3-day window around July 10th? Is that your testimony?
We were trying to corroborate the story pertaining to July 10th of 2020.
Okay. Jared Brink told you that the time of year was a time of year where it was colder, 45 or 50 degrees, right?
Correct.
And you didn't want to corroborate that part of the story by cell phone towers, perhaps see if he was out there in, let's say, October.
At that time, no, we did not.
How about since that time? Have you taken steps to corroborate that?
His cell phone data?
Right.
We did the search warrant for his location data for the July 9th through July 11th of 2020, and just to corroborate his story pertaining to July 10th of 2020.
Okay. So you knew that the identification of Henry Dinkins did not include the same shirt, right?
Correct.
Did not include the same shoes, right?
Correct.
He couldn't pick Henry Dinkins out of a lineup, could he?
According to him, it's possible, but no.
In fact, he pointed at a picture and said if he gained 50 pounds, maybe that would be him, right?
He said if he lost weight, that could be him.
Okay, so if he lost 50 pounds, that could be him, right?
I don't know if he said a direct pound, but if he lost some weight, that could possibly be him.
Okay. But you certainly don't call that an identification, do you?
Not a positive identification, no.
And in your training and experience and education as a police officer, we don't accept someone having a mole in their face as a positive identification, do we?
Not completely.
Okay. So then all we do is look for cell phone pings in the area that Jared Brink travels every day to corroborate. Is that your testimony?
Correct.
And we know Jared Brink travels that way pretty much every day during the week to go to work because he told us that, right?
Correct.
when you took Jared Brink out to the scene, was that video?
I believe I had my body worn camera on, yes.
And the same question for when you took him down to the barn where the Impala was viewed. Was that on video as well?
I believe I also had my body worn camera on that day too.
Now, out there by Kunow Implement on that road where this vehicle was stuck, I'm going to say across the road from where the pond is, so I'm kind of confused as to directions, but across the road on that gravel road, there is an area where there's quite a bit of, I'm going to call it road junk. You understand what I'm talking about when I say that?
Yes.
There's broken concrete, broken asphalt, stuff dumped there. Seems like construction trash, right?
Correct.
Where was the vehicle in relation to that?
It would have been to the south. So if you're looking, if you'd have been looking across the road at that pile of stuff, it would have been down to your right.
How far?
I can't guesstimate right now without, it's been a while since I've been out there.
But you'd agree with me that somebody is taking gravel, concrete, asphalt, other construction items there from some other location and dumping them there.
Correct.
Okay. In the picture you showed, Jared Brink from the quick shop at 3:38 a.m. was a picture of Mr. Dinkins from behind, right?
Correct. Why
Why did you not show him a picture of Mr. Dinkins' face in front of you?
I don't have an explanation for that at the time.
Wouldn't that have been a better choice?
Possibly, yes.
He could have identified the mole, couldn't he?
I don't know if a mole could have been seen from a quick shop surveillance camera.
Okay. Well, when he was dealing with this gentleman out on Highway 61, was he dealing more with this gentleman face to face or face to back?
I can't comment on that. It would have been to the side, at least from riding the vehicle with him.
Would it be better practice when you're having someone try to identify an individual to have them see their frontal view or their rear view?
The frontal, but the purpose of showing him that video was to identify the shorts.
And that's because you knew or had a feeling that the shorts would match, right?
Correct.
And Mr. Dinkins, if he's this person who you say Mr. Brink identified, Mr. Brink said he.
My understanding, that's what he said, yes.
Did you ever say he smelled bleach, Mr. Brink?
No, just cologne.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Ms. Cunningham?
Thank you, Your Honor. As we go back to your conversation with Mr. Brink in the exhibit that we've introduced, isn't it true that he mentioned to you, he told Joe Adams it was a Malibu and then immediately corrected himself and told Joe it was an Impala that he pulled out?
Yes, he did.
All right. As far as the description of clothing, Mr. Brink, in your discussions with him, what was the one piece of clothing that he was very definitive about as far as descriptions?
The shorts that he was wearing.
Was he very definitive about a shirt at all?
No.
All right. And then even relative to shoe color, was he even describing a shoe color, or were you the one who was suggesting a potential color for a shoe?
I believe I did, yes.
Okay. And then when you were, suggesting a potential color of a shoe, do you recall the comment on the video where he said that he just wakes up, gets his cup of coffee and gets on the road, and so he's not really going to wait that long?
That's correct, yes.
All right. So then the idea being that he could not identify those tennis shoes that was being worn by Mr. Dinkins as shown in that video from Quick Shop, he never ever latched on to that, did he?
No, he did not.
At any point in the interview, he never latched on to providing a description of the shoes, did he?
No, he did not.
Now, Mr. Brink, was he able to provide a definitive date as to when he would have pulled this subject off the side of the road?
No, he did not.
He did describe it as being cooler, isn't that correct?
That is correct.
And with the significant rainstorm that happened the evening of July 9th and even going into the early mornings of July 10th, a cooler temperature would be consistent with a significant rainstorm. Would that be fair to say?
Objection calls for speculation. It's beyond this witness's scope of knowledge.
Your Honor, it's just based on our life experience.
I'm going to sustain the objection.
Well, I'll just ask this. In your experience, when there are significant rainstorms, do you notice changes in temperatures?
Objection. This witness is not a meteorologist.
Sustained.
Let's talk about just the various evidence that you were able to gather from Mr. Brink. So first of all, he's mentioned in the deposition a mole that this black gentleman had on the right side of his nose. Is that verified through that photograph?
Yes.
He's mentioning a maroon Chevy Impala. Is Mr. Dinkins associated with a maroon Chevy Impala?
Yes.
Is that, in fact, a vehicle that he was observed operating during the early morning hours of July 10th and even captured? Was a maroon Chevy Impala the vehicle that that Briasia was last seen standing by at 3:30 a.m. before he left the apartment complex, having gotten something out of his closet?
Yes.
All right. And then was that maroon Chevy Impala, in fact, identified as being in the Clinton area by virtue of a ping from his cell phone a little after 7 o'clock, 7:02 and 7:03 a.m.?
Yes.
The discussion about bleach, when Mr. Brink placed himself out there and having his contact with this black gentleman, what time of the morning did he indicate that happened?
Around 4:30 in the morning,
And then what time did the purchase occur there at the Clinton Walmart?
approximately 7 o'clock.
So then to discuss the topic of of whether or not he smelled like bleach. Mr. Dinkins hadn't even purchased bleach yet. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do you find it significant that Mr. Brink has described shorts
Yes.
that Mr. Dinkins is captured wearing?
Yes.
Do you find it significant that he's talking about contact with a black gentleman, which is a maroon Chevy Impala, and that fits the demographic of Mr. Dinkins, who drives a maroon Chevy Impala?
Yes.
Do you find it significant that he described the color of the interior as being tan?
Correct.
Does that match the maroon Chevy Impala?
Yes.
Do you find it significant that he describes a white ox cord being in that vehicle, which was what was documented in that photograph?
Yes.
And so essentially, if you go through that entire chain, the testimony, or I should say the statement provided by Mr. Brink to you, did it match up with all of the evidence that had been collected through the course of this investigation?
Yes, I have.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Please let the record reflect that I'm showing the witness States Exhibit 150-1. Detective Johnson, I want you to go back in attachment A of that search warrant. I want you to read the bottom paragraph on that first page of attachment A, and then read the next two paragraphs as you go to the second page of attachment A.
Henry drove himself to the Davenport Police Station in the Chevy Impala, but his vehicle was not parked in the parking lots by the Davenport Police Station. I requested a patrol squad to drive around the area and look for the vehicle, which was located in the area of West 4th Street and Main Street. The vehicle was towed to the Davenport Police Station, where a cursory search was conducted on the vehicle. When detectives opened the trunk, they could smell what they believed to be bleach. When the trunk was fully opened, they observed an axe and a box of cleaning supplies. The civilian crime scene technician shined a blue light on a metal part of the axe and observed what she believed to be blood. The trunk was enclosed and secured for further search by the FBI.
Is that consistent with what was being down there in the area of the vehicle when the trunk was opened?
Yes.
I have no further questions.
Do you find it significant in your investigation that there was no blood found in that axe?
I'm not aware of what was found on that axe or what was not found on that axe.
In your training experience, there was no blood found in that axe?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. He's asking this witness to speculate, and this witness has indicated that he has no knowledge.
I'll,
I got
sus-
okay.
I'll sustain that
I'll
objection.
withdraw my half question. How many Chevy Impalas are there registered in Scott County, do you know?
No, I do not.
You checked that?
Can I?
Have you?
No.
Okay. But you agree with all the things that Ms. Cunningham says match up. There's several items, in fact, that don't match up with Mr. Brink's story, right?
Small things, yes.
Small things like the color of the shirt, right?
He never definitively said a color of a shirt, just possibly darker.
Okay, well, darker and white are two ends of the spectrum. We can agree on that, right?
But there's also an hour time frame from that picture to where Mr. Brink pulled him out of the ditch.
So your testimony now is that Mr. Dickens changed his shirt?
But anything's possible.
Okay, I got nothing further.
Your Honor, can you continue on? Your Honor, may the record reflect that I'm showing counsel States Exhibit 12-1 through 1232. May I approach, Your Honor? 32. I would represent to you that those are photographs taken by the FBI as they removed articles from that vehicle. Go through and look through all of those photographs. Do you see a black article of clothing?
Yes.
And in addition to that, do you also see a box of clothing that had been taken from the trunk?
Yes, I do.
I have no further questions.
Nothing further.
The state has no further questions of this witness, Your Honor.
You may step down. Ms. Cunningham, it is 10:25. Would this be an appropriate time for our mid-morning break?
It would, Your Honor.
We'll be in adjournment for approximately 15 minutes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, y'all. I'm gonna fast forward through the break. Y'all let me know if y'all have any questions now. Because I'm just playing it. Y'all make sure y'all hit the like button. Thanks so much for being here. I appreciate it.
One specific squad. But when you're assigned to a resident
This is.
until 2007, one specific squad. But when you're assigned to a resident agency, or it's a sub-office of a field office, where here we only have 3 agents that cover 6 counties in southeast Iowa, you get to do a wide variety of things. So your case assignment is quite varied.
Can you briefly describe your educational background and the training that you've received in order to be a special agent?
Sure. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Iowa. I have a master's degree in clinical psychology from Middle Tennessee State University. And post-grad, I then switched careers and went into federal law enforcement in 1999. I was first employed as a fraud investigator with the United States Postal Inspection Service. I did healthcare fraud and disability fraud investigations for them, and then joined the FBI in 2002.
Once you joined the FBI, was there additional training that you received at that time?
Yes, there was a 16-week academy that ran from February of 2002 to June of 2002. And then throughout my career, I've completed numerous trainings on a wide variety of topics.
Now, back in July of 2020, were you working as a special agent with the Omaha field office?
Yes.
At some point, were you contacted by the Davenport Police Department regarding a missing child named Breasia Terrell?
Yes.
What was the purpose of that contact?
It was to engage the FBI in the investigation and to leverage any additional resources that the FBI might bring.
Now, at that point in time, what role would you have played as a whole with the investigation?
So I was involved from the very beginning. The case agent or the primary investigator for the FBI on paper was Special Agent Cameron Smith. And then I would have been what we call the co-case agent. So I would have been right there with Special Agent Smith throughout the early portions of the investigation. And then as the investigation ramped up, we ended up parting ways and accomplishing different duties throughout the course of the case.
Initially then, when you were a co-case agent with Special Agent Smith at the beginning, what role or what types of things would you have been doing?
So the first day that it was reported, Special Agent Smith and I responded to the Davenport Police Department. Most of that first day, I was engaged in liaison with then Lieutenants Brent Biggs and Kyle Chisholm and Sergeant Jeff Pfeiffer. And we were more or less game planning the investigation. What initial steps should we take? What has already been completed? What needs to be completed? So we were in on the very initial planning stages of the investigation and then on the initial execution of those steps.
And would that have involved calling in the evidence response team and executing search warrants on various vehicles?
Yes, as well as following any leads that had come in the early stages of any missing persons case, and especially with a missing child. You need to investigate those from the inside going out. So you want to start with the people that were closest to the missing party. In this case, with Breasia Terrell. And so the investigation focused there. And so we spent a lot of time trying to establish Mr. Dinkins' location in and around the Quad Cities and other places. So there was a lot of investigation involving neighborhood canvassing for videos that may exist that would establish a location of Mr. Dinkins' vehicle or his person around town.
Now, you've indicated that in any missing person case, you start with the people closest to that individual and then branch out from there. Why do you do that?
Well, it's either to include or exclude those people as suspects. And so if we can establish a timeline, an accurate timeline as to when the missing person went missing and establish a location of where the abduction, if it was an abduction, or the missing, for lack if we can focus on the people that were the last people to be associated with the missing person and rule them out, that's great. We can then focus our energy elsewhere and following other leads. If we can't rule those people out, then we need to continue to investigate those people either until they are excluded or until they're ultimately included.
And so having information that Mr. Dinkins was the last individual seen with Breasia Terrell when she was alive, fair to say your goal was to try to establish his whereabouts to either exclude him or include him as somebody who may have abducted her.
Yes, that's accurate.
So in addition to trying to establish his known whereabouts by virtue of canvassing and obtaining surveillance video. What other steps would you have done initially during the beginning of this investigation?
Well, that was the first few days, as I recall. And then from there, as the Davenport Police Department obtained search warrants to search vehicles, apartments, and things like that, then we were helping with getting pieces of evidence to the lab and getting lab examinations done in an expedient manner.
About what items were sent to the FBI lab for further processing?
Yes, and in fact, I personally submitted 2 separate lab examination requests for dozens of items. I think it was around 50 items, and that was around July 22nd of 2020, so within 2 weeks of the initial event.
How did you decide which items of evidence to send?
I don't recall that I was involved in those decisions. I think that the Davenport Police Department and Special Agent Smith,
their testimony regarding how certain items were selected.
Right.
Now, at some point you mentioned that you and Special Agent Smith, your roles started to split a bit, where he would cover one area and you covered something else. Do you recall approximately when that would have taken place?
That would have been within the first week or so. Because when you're the case agent in a large scale investigation like this, I mean, there were multiple agencies involved in this. At one point, we ended up having scheduled searches that involved hundreds of law enforcement officers and volunteers that were searching a lot of areas up and around Clinton County. And so when you're the case agent in a case of that scale, it's more important for you to be co-located in the command post area, which is usually located at the local police department, as it was here at the Davenport Police Department. And so you can kind of quarterback things for the FBI. You're the coordinator. You can delegate roles. You can tell people, hey, cover this lead, cover that lead. And that was Special Agent Smith's role. My role was more as an active investigator out in the field. And so as we branched out around July 14th, 15th, 16th, we were conducting those large scale searches up and around Clinton County. And I was, for example, I was a team leader for one of those search teams. And we had gridded off several areas and searched fields, creek areas, a lot of different places up there. So I was out doing active investigation like that. Special Agent Smith had assumed more of a coordinator's role.
So in coordinating those canvassing and search efforts, I believe you indicated you had led one of those searches near the Clinton area. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And why was it that you started to focus on the Clinton area?
Well, one of the things that we had done early was engage our cellular analysis survey team, our CAST team, to analyze cellular telephone records that the Davenport Police Department had obtained. And in analyzing those records, they had identified some activity near Clinton, Iowa for Mr. Dinkins' phone. And so we were focusing on those areas, believing that since that data was pointing outside of the Quad Cities, we thought maybe that would be an area that evidence may be located. So we focused our attention up there.
And do you recall which areas you would have searched?
Well, there were many fields that we searched over that 2 or 3 days. I remember most of our searches were along Highway 30, both north and south of Highway 30. There were fields there. I was also involved in searches of creek areas. And then I recall on July 16th, while we were out searching one field, I was approached by a female who said, hey, I found some tracks in this field over here that shouldn't be there. You guys might want to check it out. So then we followed that lead and cleared that field. Didn't find anything, but it was things like that. So we were kind of all over the place up there.
And did any of those searches turn up anything that was eventually significant to this investigation?
Not that I know of.
At some point then, around March, did you start to take a more singular case agent role in this particular case?
So
March of 2021, I wanted to clarify that.
Right, I understand. Following the discovery of Briage's body in late March of 21, I was not involved in the body recovery process or any of that part of the investigation. Special Agent Smith was still the case agent at that point. Special Agent Smith ultimately transferred to the Kansas City field office in April, and then I became the case agent or the primary investigator on or around April 23rd of 2021.
Now, you've testified that you were not involved with the body recovery. However, at some point, did you go to the area around Kuhnau Implement in Clinton County?
Yes, I did.
And why did you go there?
So after I assumed the role of case agent, I spoke with Detective Evan Obert and told him that I was the new case agent. And we discussed what steps needed to be taken to further the investigation now that the body had been recovered. And also, a witness had come forward that had possibly placed Mr. Dinkins' vehicle in that area on the gravel road on 270th there near the body recovery site. And so Detective Obert and I discussed that, and we decided that it would be a good idea to collect soil samples from the area that the witness had identified pulling Mr. Dinkins' vehicle from the ditch.
At that point, were you aware that soil and debris had been collected from a Chevy Impala known to be driven by Mr. Dinkins?
Yes.
And were you aware that other soil samples had been collected throughout the Highway 30 area and Credit Island area around Davenport and Clinton County?
Yes.
And so once that decision was made to take further soil samples from that road at 270th Avenue, how did you proceed at that time?
I had a soil collection kit that was provided by the FBI laboratory. I brought the kit up to the area. I had photographs that I had obtained from Detective Obert showing the area of interest that the witness had indicated. And so using landmarks in those photos, I established a collection area and then commenced collecting the soil samples.
Can you walk us through the process of collecting a soil sample?
Sure, it's very exciting. The area of interest was the west side of 270th Avenue. And this is an area that's I'd say within 100 yards of where the body was recovered, okay? And the area of interest was the west side of the road, including the ditch area. And so using the landmarks from the photos that Detective Obert had provided, I established the collection site and then collected 10 samples. Now, the way you do that, you have a soil kit. It has 10 plastic vials in it. They're short vials, about, I'd say they're 2 inches tall, and then, I don't know, a quarter size in circumference. And you have a digging tool. I had a small hand spade. You pick your first area, dig down about 2 inches, collect the sample, put it into the plastic vial, and then cover the vial with filter paper. It's a porous paper, so you don't trap moisture in there. You want the sample to dry, and then you screw the top on, and then you return that to the collection kit. When I collected each sample, I had a smartphone with me, and I dropped a GPS location pin at each sample site and then recorded the GPS coordinates for each sample. After the sample was collected, I then cleaned the collection tool, the hand spade, cleaned it thoroughly so that we wouldn't have contamination from one sample to the next, and then moved to the next sample collection site and repeated the process.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
So I'm going to refer you here to State's Exhibit. I can't read that. Hold on. 41. Do you recognize the area depicted in State's Exhibit 41?
Yes, I do.
What area is being shown here?
This is the area of the pond just south of Kunau Implement. Highway 61 is just to the west, and then there's a triangle that kind of forms around the pond. It's bordered on the east side by 270th Avenue, on the west side by 218th Street, and then by that dirt road to the north that's kind of a connector.
So right next to you here is a pointer. Are you able to show us on the map where you would have collected those soil samples from?
It's right around this area here.
And it appears you're pointing towards the southwest portion of 270th Street.
Yes, it's closer to 218th Street than it is to the gravel road that bounds that triangle on the north side. I would definitely say it's to the southeast of the pond.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm showing you what the state's marked as Exhibit 138. Do you recognize this item? And we have opened it prior to your testimony today to make that easier for you.
Yes, I do.
And what is this exhibit?
So these are the individual soil samples that I collected from the area that I just indicated on States 41, I believe. And you can see with each of these samples, I wrote with a marker on each one of them and identified them as 1 through 10 to differentiate them as individual samples. And you can see that each sample is secured by a piece of tape across the top to ensure that they weren't accessed between leaving my custody and arriving at the lab.
And FBI evidence log number?
No.
Okay.
So for evidence logging purposes, these would be considered one item. Now, once they get to the lab, they were each assigned a specific number that the lab used. And so just to differentiate, these 10 samples would be considered FBI evidence number 1B191. But once they got to the lab, they were given lab designators and they were given number 83 through 92.
And so the FBI gave it one number, the lab would have separated those out into 10 different numbers.
Yes.
But you've indicated that your handwriting is on each of those, and so you can recognize them as the soil samples you collected from this area in roughly April of 2021.
Absolutely. And you can see my initials are here on the heat seal for this package that contained all 10 samples with the date of May 10th of 2021.
And let me clarify then, do you know the date that you would have collected these soil samples?
I collected these on May 6th, 2021.
At this time, Your Honor, the state would offer Exhibit 138 into evidence.
No objection. Exhibit 138 will be admitted.
So Special Agent McMillan, after collecting those soil samples, you've indicated that at some point they were sent to the FBI crime lab. Is that fair?
Yes.
Do you recall when those would have been sent?
They would have been sent. So several things have to happen before they can be sent to the lab. I have to enter them into our evidence system. That entry has to be finalized by our evidence technician in Omaha. And then I have to prepare a lab examination request to the lab that then initiates the transfer of those items from Omaha to the lab. So I collected those on May 6th, and I believe they were shipped to the lab within the month. I believe that I transferred them to Omaha on May 12th, I think they were received, and then they shipped them to the lab that same month.
And to your knowledge, was there an additional examination of the soil samples you provided and compared to the soil samples that had previously been collected and provided to the lab taken from Mr. Dinkins' Chevy Impala?
Yes.
At some point, were you provided with the findings from those examinations?
I was. There was a report prepared by FBI geologist and forensic examiner Ian Sagnor.
Now, based on that report, did you prepare a map or diagram referencing 3 of the specific soil samples that you would have taken back on May 6th from the area of 270th Avenue?
Yes, I did.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm showing you State's Exhibits 156-1 and 156-2. Do you recognize these exhibits?
Yes, I do.
And are these the maps or diagrams that you would have created referencing 3 specific soil samples taken back on May 6, 2021 from this area?
Yes.
At this time, Your Honor, the state would offer 156-1 and 156-2 into evidence.
No objection. Exhibits 156-1 and 2 will be admitted.
May I publish, Your Honor?
You may.
So showing you first 156-1, can you explain what we're looking at here?
So we're looking at an overview of the collection area, and you can see that there are 3 items labeled there, item 89, 91, and 92 on the area of the west side of 270th Avenue, near where I indicated previously on States 41.
And what are items 89, 91, and 92?
So those are the lab numbers for 3 samples that were included, using the lab's language, they were included samples, meaning that they were indistinguishable from the samples taken from Mr. Dinkins' car and the samples that I took from these 3 areas.
So then showing you State's Exhibit 156-2, what's the difference here between 156-1 and 156-2?
So this is a zoomed in view, a closer in view, where you can see the 3 distinct collection areas along with the GPS coordinates for each collection. And you can see that the 3 collection areas are from distinct areas. One is actually on the gravel road. One is kind of in the shoulder where there's a little vegetation. And then one, it's not really reflected, the depth in this 2D map, but the collection point labeled item 92 is actually quite a ways down a steep embankment off the road.
All right, thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Mr. Waters.
Mr. McMillan, I think you said that you were involved in this case. Okay, and then just to summarize, that you were involved in executing search warrants and taking evidence from certain cars in an RV or an apartment, right?
I was not involved in those searches. I was aware that they were occurring, and I was present at some of those search sites, but I did not take place in those searches.
Okay, so you were just aware because you were assigned as some sort of case agent, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then really, these soil samples that you collected, there were 10 of them, right?
Yes,
Okay, and that was on May 6th of 2021.
yes,
So at some point before May 6th of 2021, you learned of information that Mr. Dinkins might have been up at that area of the Kunal implement, correct?
yes.
Okay, and now, did you learn that information from the Davenport Police Department?
Yes,
Okay, so then I assume then that the Davenport Police Department tells you this information that he could have been up there, and then the FBI is sent up to this area, the Kunal implement area, right?
right. As I discussed earlier, I had discussions with Detective Obert, and we discussed what steps needed to be completed to further the investigation, and the collection of these samples was just one of them.
Okay, so these 10 samples then that you've collected, I mean, you physically collected them with a spade and everything that you just told us, right?
Yes.
How long do those samples then take to get to that lab you were talking about?
So I believe that they were there within 2 weeks. So I collected them on May 6th, and I would have to look at the evidence log as to when they were actually shipped. But I think it was by May 19th, they had been sent to the lab.
Okay, so then you just told us essentially where you found these items. How do you keep track of that?
I'm not quite sure what you mean.
Well, these 3 items you just told us in State's Exhibit 156-1, how do you actually place those items in their physical location? I mean, how do I know that item 89 is right there where you say it is?
Oh, as I testified on direct, after each collection, I literally stood right on top of the collection point and dropped a GPS pin using Google Maps from my smartphone,
Okay.
and then noted those GPS coordinates.
Sure, and if you can take that pointer to your left, can you tell us where the other 7 items are that you found? There's next to you.
Oh, right here. So not exactly. I can tell you, Judge, do you mind if I stand?
You may.
I can tell you that this is what I called sample 10. Item 89 is what I called sample 7. And item 91 is what I called sample 9. Okay, so I can tell you where those were. I can tell you the way that I collected the other 7 samples. I started here, and then with sample 1, and then went about 5 meters to the north, collected sample 2, then collected sample 3 out here in the road, then 4 down here to kind of establish a perimeter for collection. And then work my way from 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8, 9, and then 10. So kind of made that perimeter box and then kind of meandered through that box, collecting the remainder of the samples.
Okay, so then you did that at the direction or because of this information that his car may have been up there, correct? I mean, that's why you picked this area to take those soil samples.
Yes.
Right? Okay, nowhere else did you take any soil sample, right?
No.
Okay, so then I guess maybe from that point of those 3 items, maybe a 10-meter radius in every direction you took the 10 soil samples?
Oh, not even that. I think that original perimeter box that I just described with the first 4 collection points was only about 5 meters north to south, and then about 3 to 4 meters east to west.
Okay, so I mean, it's just right around your personal presence.
Well, I mean, it's about the size of a car if you think of it that way.
Sure. And then after these soil samples, then all you do is just send them to a lab to be tested and compared with the dirt that was on the underside of Mr. Dickens' car.
Yes,
That's it. You weren't involved in any of the testing, right?
that's right.
And then some report just gets sent to you, and then you read that report.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I have.
No further questions.
You may sit down.
Thank you, Judge.
Your Honor, the state calls forensic scientist Ian Saginaw.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? Please have a seat.
Please state your name for the record and spell both your first and your last name.
Ian Saginor, Iansaginor.
Mr. Saginaw, what is your occupation?
I'm a geologist, forensic examiner, the FBI laboratory in Quantico, Virginia.
How long have you been employed with the FBI?
Approximately 7 years.
Could you describe your educational background?
Yes, I have a bachelor's in geology from Vassar College and a PhD in geology from Rutgers University.
When did you conclude your formal education?
Rutgers was 2008.
And then is that when you started your career in the field of geology?
Yes, I was a geology professor for 8 years.
Where did you teach at?
Keystone College in Pennsylvania.
After your tenure as a professor, did you join the FBI?
Yes, I did.
What is a geologist?
A geologist is somebody who studies earth materials.
All right. And within the context of that, as far as your functions at the FBI, what specific unit are you assigned to?
I'm in the trace evidence unit.
Can you define what the trace evidence unit does?
Yes, the trace evidence unit consists of geologists, anthropologists, and also hair and fiber examiners. So we look at a lot of small material, things that you look at under a microscope.
In that capacity, do you receive and look at various soil samples?
Yes, we do.
All right. Were you involved in the investigation of a missing child identified as Breasia Terrell?
Yes,
And at what point in time did you become involved in that particular investigation?
I believe that case was assigned to me in January of 2022.
Let's go ahead and let's discuss the case if we can. Now, the child was reported missing in July of 2020. Were you aware of that?
Not at the time, no.
Was there a colleague of yours who had been involved in the investigation from the early stages?
Yes,
Are you familiar with Jody Webb?
yes, I am.
And how are you familiar with Jody Webb?
She's the other geologist in the trace evidence unit.
What types of responsibilities had Ms. Webb carried out prior to you becoming involved in this particular investigation?
She was involved in a provenance investigation. So I believe there was material of unknown origin, soil of unknown origin, and she was helping for investigative purposes to narrow down where that soil might be from.
All right. That being said, were you aware of soil samples having been collected from an area identified as Credit Island in the southwest portion of Davenport before you ever became involved?
Yes, at the time I wasn't aware exactly where those were from, but yes, she had multiple known soil samples sent to her.
From that location? And then were you also aware of soil samples being collected in Clinton, Iowa, along 300th Avenue and Highway 30?
Yes.
And again, perspective before we go through and talk about your involvement in this particular case. Did you have knowledge that the soil samples had been compared to soil samples collected from a vehicle of interest, specifically described as a maroon Chevy Impala?
Yes.
And then what findings did you note that Ms. Webb had made when she had compared the soil samples from the area of River Drive and the soil samples collected along Highway 30, 300th Avenue to the soil samples collected from the undercarriage of the maroon Chevy Impala?
She had excluded them as having come from the same source.
Okay. That being said, was your involvement triggered after the remains of Breasia Terrell were discovered in an area north of Clinton?
Yes, it was. I also performed a technical review on Ms. Webb's report.
Okay, thank you. And let's talk about that because she had indicated that she had also performed a technical review of your report. Describe your technical review analysis.
So the technical review, excuse me, is specifically a review of the standard operating procedures, ensuring that they were all followed. Basically, that's what the technical review is.
All right. Did you agree with her findings?
So the verification is a separate review, and that was performed by Maureen Buttrell. So I did not perform a verification of the results themselves. The technical review was more focused on the procedures.
Okay, all right. And you had no issues with the procedures that she had followed, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Now, Ms. Webb has testified, and she gave us a very good education as to how you go about comparing soil samples. So what I'd like to do is I just would like just to get right to the heart of the issue if I could. Are you familiar with FBI agent James McMillan?
Yes.
Okay. How are you familiar with James McMillan?
He was, I believe, the lead investigator, lead FBI investigator on this case.
Okay. And did you have knowledge of Agent McMillan having collected soil samples along the area of 270th Avenue there in Clinton County?
Yes.
Were those soil samples submitted to the FBI laboratory in Quantico to be compared to the soil samples collected from the undercarriage of that maroon Chevy Impala?
Yes.
And were you specifically tasked with going through the process of comparing the soil samples from the vehicle to the samples that he had collected along 270th Avenue?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, may the record reflect that I'm showing counsel what's been marked as State's Exhibit 51. May I approach?
You may.
I'm handing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 51. I'd like for you to look at that exhibit and tell me if you recognize that exhibit.
I do recognize this.
How do you recognize State's Exhibit 51?
This is the report that I issued for this particular case.
Okay. Now, on this particular report, how is it captioned at the top?
With the case ID OM3290265, is that what you're referring to?
Absolutely. And then is there a laboratory number that appears on this document?
There is 2020-01448-31.
Does it set forth the communications that had occurred relative to this particular investigation?
Yes.
What were the communication dates?
July 29th, 2020 and May 13th, 2021.
The communications for July 29th of 2020, would that have involved the soil samples that Ms. Webb would have been responsible for analyzing and comparing to what was recovered from the undercarriage of the maroon Chevy Impala?
I would have to double check. Those dates get generated automatically sometimes when new letters are submitted. So sometimes that can be a little confusing. I can't be sure exactly which one is which. I think I might have noted that on a copy of my report, which I have here, which I if I may, I could refer to.
Absolutely. And would it help to refresh a recollection by doing so?
Yes, it would.
Your Honor, may the witness refer to his reports?
He may.
My understanding is that July 29th, 2020 was debris from the vehicle.
All right.
I'm sorry, July, yes. No, hold on. Submission 3 was clothing. That was July 29th, 2020. And May 13th, 2021 was submission number 6. Those were known soils that were submitted.
Okay, all right. Now, is there a subject name identified on your laboratory report?
There is.
And does the name of Breasia Terrell appear on this particular document?
Yes.
And does it also identify a discipline for this document?
Yes.
What is that discipline?
Mineralogy.
And then does your name appear as the FBI analyst who would have performed the analysis of various submitted items?
Yes, my name is on the final page.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move to introduce State's Exhibit 51.
I have no objection. Exhibit 51 will be admitted.
Okay. Your Honor, may I publish this exhibit as we talk through it?
You may.
Mr. Saganor, going to State's Exhibit 51, first of all, what I'd like to do is I want to discuss the various items of evidence that you would have received and performed an analysis of. So for purposes of our written record, if you could go through how many categories are we talking about as far as items that you were looking at? And when I talk about categories, I'm using that as a way of describing locations, essentially.
Okay. Items 57, 58, 59, and 60 were samples that were collected from a vehicle. That's how they were represented to me. Items 83, 84, 85, 86, 87.
And then going to page 2 of our document.
Item 88, 89, 90, 91, and 92 were soil samples with those coordinates that you can see right there.
All right. In some of these entries, I notice soil sample, and then there is a subcategory, for example, like with item 89, and then we see item 89-1. Can you explain the difference between what would be the item 89 as compared to the subcategory of item 89-1 so that we understand that?
Yes. In this report, all items that have a -1 for 57-1, etc., are a black particle that I had removed specifically so that I could go look at it with a scanning electron microscope. So I pulled it out and identified it as 89-1 as black particle from 89. So I'm using them collectively with the item to which it refers to the scanning electron microscope without being confused about where it was from.
Certainly. Now, if you could, I want you just to walk through then your analysis and how that process worked.
A soil comparison is the examination of soil to determine the color, texture, and composition of the soil. So the first thing that happens typically is looking at the color, and that's done side-by-side comparisons between soils that are being compared and documented with a Munsell soil color chart, and I can spell Munsell for you. It's Munsell. If the color is found to be indistinguishable, then we can move on to texture. Typically, that works with a stereo binocular microscope. And just to give a closer up overview of the materials that are in it, and you can usually see a lot of detail. And if at that point, at that point you're looking at things like how angular the material is, shape of the individual particles, for example. And if that is found to be indistinguishable, then sometimes other things can be done as well, such as placing them on a slide, a microscope slide, for a petrographic microscope, and I can spell that as well, PETROGRAPHIC, a petrographic microscope, which is a compound microscope that has some special additions that geologists use to help them identify minerals. In this case, I also looked at a few particles under a scanning electron microscope.
Okay, what is it about the particles that you removed from various soil samples that was of interest to you?
They were difficult to identify. I wasn't sure what they were, and but most importantly, what I wanted to do was make sure that they shared the same characteristics, even if I was unable to identify specifically what it was, that they were the same optically and that they were the same chemically.
Okay, and what did you know when you had removed those particles from the various soil samples that had those subcategories?
So I had described them using the petrographic microscope, and they were indistinguishable in their optical properties. They were also found to be indistinguishable in their elemental or chemical properties.
Okay, and then so then you look at color, texture, is that what we've just discussed?
Texture and composition, yes.
Sure, and then so then once you've examined the color, texture, and composition of the soil samples, at that point then, how does the process conclude?
If they have been found to be indistinguishable, then we can write a report that says that they looked at all of those different properties, that they were found to be indistinguishable in those properties, and consequently, the possibility that they shared a common origin cannot be eliminated.
Okay, does that mean that that's a positive finding?
We call that an inclusion.
Right, and so in layman's terms, the descriptor that you use as an inclusion, a layman would interpret as a positive outcome. Would that be fair to say?
I think that's true.
Certainly. All right, now the different findings that you can make, identify each of those different findings.
So could you repeat the question?
Yeah, identify the different types of findings that you can make when you're comparing soil samples.
So we went over inclusion. If a difference is found, then the examination can be discontinued, at least for that comparison. In that case, we could find an exclusion. Now, sometimes there's not enough material available, or that material has been altered in some way. Maybe it's been contaminated by some other material, or mold has grown, for example. In that case, I might issue an inconclusive, which just says that I can't say that it's included or excluded because I'm not able to perform all of the examinations that I need to do. So that's inconclusive.
Okay, now, Mr. Saganor, I understand that from the maroon Chevy Impala, and I'm just taking out the subcategories, we had a total of 4 different samples that came to you. Is that correct?
4 samples from the vehicle, yes.
Okay. Now, for each of those samples, is there a descriptor for the location where that soil sample was collected from?
Yes.
All right. Again, I'm going to go back to the Alamo, and if I can publish this. And Mr. Sagador, I don't know if you have any understanding of this or not, but if you do, help us. For item 57, the sample that was taken from the passenger side rear footwear drain plug. Can you help us understand that location on the undercarriage?
I cannot. I don't know what that refers to.
All right. But at any rate, it's given it to us from the passenger side rear portion of that vehicle. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what it says.
Okay. For 58, is it giving us a location?
Yes. Driver's side rear footwear drain plug of red Chevrolet.
And then go to item 59,
Debris from driver's side pinch weld of red Chevrolet.
and then go to item number 60.
Debris from driver's side rear brake line bracket of red Chevrolet.
Okay. How many soil samples was submitted by Special Agent James McMillan to the laboratory?
In addition to those 4?
Exactly. And I'm talking about samples that were collected in an area that we know to be 270th Avenue, but in your report, you're describing it how?
Yes, there should be 10 of them.
Okay. And what's the descriptor that you have in your report for those 10 samples that came in?
Soil sample from west side of gravel road, and then you'll see a whole bunch of numbers, and those are coordinates that I was given, so I just put those in here as well.
Okay. Are those GPS coordinates?
They are, yes.
Thank you so much. All right. Walk us through that process then. For the 10 samples that were collected on the west side of that gravel road with the varying GPS coordinates, when you compared those soil samples to the 4 samples taken from the undercarriage of the maroon Chevy Impala, what findings did you make?
May I refer to my report?
You may.
Thank you. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay. The first part of that says 3 of the soil samples recovered from the red Chevrolet, that's items 57, 58, and 60, cannot be differentiated from 3 of the soil samples recovered from the west side of the gravel road as represented by items 89, 91, and 92 by color, texture, and composition. Consequently, the west side of the gravel road is represented by items 89, 91, and 92 cannot be eliminated as a possible source of 3 of the soil samples recovered from the red Chevrolet, items 57, 58, and 60. See inclusion in the interpretation section below.
All right. Now then, just for purposes of our written record, item 57 came from what location then under the red Chevy Impala?
Item 57 was side rear footwear drain plug.
Item 58
58, debris from driver's side rear footwear drain plug of red Chevrolet.
and item 60.
Debris from driver's side rear brake line bracket of red Chevrolet.
So essentially every soil sample that was collected from the rear portion of that vehicle, you made an inclusive finding. Would that be fair to say?
An inclusive finding to those 3 known soil samples noted there.
And then if we go to item 59,
'59 is debris from driver's side pinch weld of red Chevrolet.
and so that was the only sample that you were not able to make an inclusive finding. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, the only one that was found to be different and thus excluded from all the known samples.
All right.
But just to be clear,
Sure.
some of those other ones, 57, 58, and 60, were excluded from 7 of the soil samples.
Certainly. All right. So of the 10, we have 3 that were inclusive of the soil samples taken from the rear of the maroon Chevy Impala. Would that be
Yes.
fair to say? And is that an accurate summary of the findings that you made when you went through and did the comparisons?
Yes.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Mr. Waters.
Dr. Saganor, just to be clear, your involvement in this case was essentially getting these soil samples and then comparing them to other soil samples that you already had,
Yes.
right? Okay, so I don't want to, just keep pushing this, but just to be clear here, 3 out of those 10 soil samples were what you deem to be inclusive as compared to the soil samples from the car.
2 items, 57, 58, and 60, yes.
Okay. And then just so I'm clear here, that the definition of inclusion is the possibility that these geologically derived collected from, in this instance, that car.
Yes, that possibility can't be excluded.
Okay, cannot be eliminated.
Yes.
Okay, so then 7 of those samples, or 7 out of the 10 samples as compared to the car, you're saying explicitly they are excluded as a possible soil sample as compared to that car.
Yes, because differences were found.
Okay, and then you mentioned on direct examination that you saw that these are defined by geographic locations, right?
Correct.
Okay, and is that just a common practice to be, for these soil samples to be identified?
Coordinates like this and sometimes more general descriptions of their location.
Okay, are you aware that these soil samples then were collected very closely together?
Yes.
I mean, you would agree with me that it's, mere feet together.
I don't know exactly how many feet. My understanding is that they are on that road and they're fairly close to each other.
Would it surprise you at all that the area that these 10 samples were collected is no bigger than a car?
No, it would not surprise me.
Okay, is that common practice?
It's common practice to collect numerous soil samples, and there's often variability even among soil samples that are collected within a restricted area.
So in that, and in this instance, in this restricted area, 70% of those soil samples were excluded as being the same dirt or soil as those collected from the car.
Yes, that's correct.
And then one of the samples was excluded from everything.
That is also correct.
That would be item 59.
Correct.
Okay. So then, again, just so I'm clear, inclusion is just the possibility that it cannot be, these samples as compared to each other can't be eliminated.
Yes, the color, texture, and composition was compared, and because of that, because they were found to be indistinguishable. That's exactly right.
Okay, and then the exclusion then is 100%. These are not the same dirts or soils.
Well, yes, that they did not come from the same source, even though that source may be fairly small. Yes.
Okay, and then as part of your involvement with this investigation or your involvement, you weren't given any other soil samples to compare against the car, were you?
No. I was not. There were other soil samples that Ms. Webb compared.
Sure, that you oversaw or you perhaps maybe agreed with?
No, I performed a technical review on that report, but I didn't perform a verification of her results. That was performed by Maureen Buttrell.
Okay, that's all I have.
Ms. Cunningham.
Thank you. Mr. Saganor, help to educate the lay audience. I think maybe for individual, well, I'm not even going to say I think, for individuals who don't work in this field, it would be a natural assumption that if soil samples were collected from a specific area, that you could compare all of those soil samples to one another and that they
I mean, there may be some cases where soil is similar for a greater distance, but that kind of variability that you're describing is common. If anybody's ever dug a hole more than a few feet, you usually see several individual layers that you go through. So soils that appear different and therefore from different sources can be very close to each other, and also the boundary between them can be gradual, so it can slowly transition to another soil type, but it can also be fairly sharp. It just depends on the area that you're in.
What causes the variability that you would see amongst soil samples if collected from a given area?
There are a number of soil forming factors that arise to give soil its character, to give it its color and texture and its composition. So in a broad sense, climate is a big driver of that. So soils from rainforests tend to be different than soils from deserts. The parent materials, which is the rock or soil that was broken down to form that material, gives it a lot of different characteristics. The organisms that live in it process that material and add organic content, which can add to the color as well. And also time. So the longer soils develop, the more they can become degraded. And also those layers that I described as you dig a hole, those layers often form and become more distinct over time.
Certainly. Let me throw this out by way of an example. For any of us, who do yard work, let's say we work in a particular bed and we, in digging down into that bed, we find that there is a lot of clay within the texture of that soil. It makes it difficult to plant various plants. But then you may move to another bed within your yard and you don't have that issue. Is that a good way of helping us understand how various factors may just change the composition, color, and texture of soil in very close proximity to one another?
Yes, and there's another factor, which is humans. So you're talking about a garden, but material can be added and subtracted during construction. When roads are built, material is dumped down, sometimes to provide a basis for it. So in addition to all the natural soil forming factors, anytime you're close to humans and things that humans have built or manufactured, that is another contributing factor that can lead to differences, which can be quite striking. You can have material that isn't native to that particular location. It's dumped there by a dump truck for whatever reason.
Okay. In this particular area, it was described as what was once a quarry. That there had been the development of a quarry that had since been abandoned. With my having indicated that, would that be one of those scenarios where you have a lot of human impact on soils within a particular area?
Well, certainly if, as they were excavating a quarry, they were dumping material all over, that would certainly affect it. I don't want to hypothesize about, speculate about specifically what led to variations in the soil in this particular location with respect to that quarry. But as a general sense, anytime you're digging a big hole and putting that dirt someplace else, you're altering both the area that you're in and the area that you're dumping that material.
Okay. Setting that aside, though, 3 of the soil samples underneath the undercarriage of that vehicle were inclusive of 3 of the soil samples that were collected on the west side of that road. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Waters.
Again, just so we're clear, those 3 items that you defined as inclusive as compared to the car, you aren't positive that those samples are the same as those found on the car, right?
I'm sorry, could you rephrase that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not possible for you to define that those are the same soil samples.
I believe what you're saying is that I can't say that there is no other soil anywhere that might also share those characteristics. So I'm not saying that the soil from that location is the only soil. I'm sorry, if I could reverse that, the soil from the vehicle that its source had to be from exactly right there and couldn't have been from anywhere else. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Yes,
I mean,
that is true.
And there's no way you could have said that.
There's no way that you can say that a soil sample from a vehicle, for example, originated from one specific location and could not have originated from anywhere else that has those same characteristics.
Okay, then that begs the question. you couldn't tell me whether the dirt from the car came from, you know, New York, some other place in the United States. Obviously, granted, your study behind, you know, dirt and its locations.
It is possible that there are other locations that would share that. However, those locations would have to have the same paramaterial. They would have to have the same soil forming factors, the climate, the organisms that contributed to it, the paramaterial, and all of that, that as well.
Sure, and those, I mean, those would have to be.
That's part of it, yes.
Okay, and then, so being that Iowa is part of the Midwestern region, you know, those samples could technically be found anywhere in Iowa, right?
I wouldn't say that they could be found anywhere. I looked at the color, the texture, and the composition. I looked at it under a microscope, identified specific minerals that were present, and those same. The soil is generally similar, and I think that you can see that in the variability that you see right at that site. Some of those soil samples found from the west side of the gravel road were found to be inclusive. Others, small differences were found as well.
And I'm imagining that the Mississippi River has something to do with that. Am I right?
Well, the Mississippi River is massive and certainly has affected the development of soils in this region. Yes.
Sure. So given that we're very close here, especially this place by the Kunal implement is close to the Mississippi River, anywhere along that river, you could have found inclusive soil samples as compared to that car.
Again, I wouldn't say anywhere. What I would say is that I can't exclude as a possible source any area that I have not specifically looked at.
Sure. So you would have to look at it before you can make that determination.
Yes, if you had another location that needed to be compared, then yes, I would have to look at that.
And lastly, then of course, and I think you might have already testified this, but you didn't look at any other location, right? Every sample came from that one location.
The only examinations that I performed were on soil or debris that was removed from the vehicle compared to soil from this location that we're referring to.
Okay, that's all I have.
Ms. Cunningham?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Saganor, would you agree that throughout the course of any given investigation, law enforcement will gather facts that they're able to develop either through witness statements and in a situation such as this, paths of travel that the vehicle was known to have taken?
I suppose that's true.
Certainly. As a component of this particular investigation, I would represent to you that there was a large amount of video surveillance footage that was seized. And in the course of the investigation, locations that vehicle had traveled to, there were soil samples collected from those locations where it was would have potentially been off a paved roadway. That being said, is it significant to you that at any given location where that vehicle had traveled and would have been off a paved roadway, that soil samples would have been collected from those locations and compared to the undercarriage of what was found underneath the maroon Chevy Impala?
I'm sorry, are you referring to the soil samples that Ms. Webb analyzed?
Absolutely.
So I apologize. I don't know exactly what the question is. Were you asking, is it significant?
Well, let's just say this. If a vehicle is traveling on a paved highway,
so much for joining.
we wouldn't imagine that there would be mud stuck up underneath the undercarriage, would we?
That is often the case, but when the specifics of how soil ends up on a vehicle depend a lot on the conditions, how wet it is. So it is possible to drive down a road and pick up debris from that. It is possible to drive down a road and not. So I can't say that any place a car goes, it will pick up soil from that location.
Certainly, I understand that. But if law enforcement had gone to locations where that vehicle was identified as having traveled in areas or parked in areas where there could be soil up underneath that undercarriage, isn't it significant to you that soil samples would have been collected from each of those locations and compared to what was underneath the undercarriage?
I would say that the examination that Ms. Webb did showed that the soil samples that were collected from those locations that you're referring to were different from the soil that is on the vehicle and is therefore excluded from having come from a common source.
Thank you. But yet with your findings, when you compared 10 of those samples to the dirt under the undercarriage, 3 of those 10 soil samples were inclusive of what was taken from under the undercarriage of that vehicle, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
You may step down.
Thank you.
We'll be adjourned for lunch. We'll reconvene at 1:30.
All right, y'all. Let's see who's up. Let me see. I'm trying to figure out how far we're gonna go today. And they're on lunch. Okay. Wait a minute. Okay.
All right, Detective Obert, as we look at...
Don't that man look like that other man? Am I losing my mind, y'all? This man right here look like the other man. Hold on. Or did he come back? Okay, that's a different man. Yeah, I'm losing my man. All right, we're gonna try to get through all these witnesses for the day. We're gonna see how it goes. All right. Thank y'all so much for joining. Be sure to hit the like button for me, okay?
The information that was gleaned from his cell phone, identifying the location for that phone relative to the time frame of 4:30 a.m., what was determined?
That it hit off a cell tower near the area of where Briage's remains were located.
All right. Can you show us on that map where Highway 61 and Highway 30 meet? Then can you show us the location of where 212th Street and Kunal Implement is located?
In that general area.
Now, on this particular exhibit, is there some type of emblem that's been placed on this exhibit to denote the area of Kunal Implement?
Yes.
And then in this rural area, are there red dots to identify the location of various cell towers?
Yes.
All right. Is there a cell tower that his phone was hitting on out in that area?
Yes.
Could you please point out the red dots to show which cell tower his phone was hitting off of? Okay. And then for purposes of our written record, read what's right underneath that red dot so that we have that.
Like the location on the map or
Yeah.
or the details of the time.
No, the location on the map.
It appears to say Charlotte.
Certainly. When we think of the cell tower, if you consider the entire circumference of that cell tower, what would be the entire circumference in terms of degrees?
Just less than 180.
Okay.
Is that-
Well, not that, but is a cell tower, as far as the cell phone's ability to hit off of it, are there 3 different sectors?
I'm not the expert in that matter.
Certainly. Then let's go ahead and do this. As far as what we see on this particular exhibit, does it show us where that cell phone is hitting that cell tower as far as a sector is concerned?
Yes.
Okay. And would that be facing the area of Kunal Implement?
It would be.
And then what time is his cell phone hitting that cell tower?
4:28 a.m.
On what date?
July 10th, 2020.
Mr. Brink had indicated that he was traveling to work when he pulled a maroon Chevy Impala out. Do we have his phone then hitting on a cell tower down in the southwest portion of Scott County in the area of Linwood Mining? And let me adjust that.
That is correct.
Can you show us on the map where Buffalo, Iowa is located at? Okay. Are there a number of cell towers down in that area of Davenport?
There are.
Is his cell phone hitting on a tower that would be in the area of Buffalo?
That is correct.
And then what time do we have his cell phone registering that cell tower down in that area?
6:59 a.m.
All right. I have no further questions.
No cross. Thank you.
Your Honor, the state calls FBI criminalist Jennifer Pullen to the stand. No, DCI criminalist Jennifer Pullen.
Raise your hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please have a seat.
Please state your name for the record and spell both your first and your last name.
Jennifer Pullen, Jennifer Pullen.
What is your occupation?
I am a criminalist with the Iowa DCI Crime Lab.
How long have you been employed with the Iowa DCI?
About 8 years.
Please describe your prior educational background.
I have a Bachelor of Science degree in Biochemistry and Forensic Science.
Where did you graduate from?
Simpson College.
When did you complete your formal education?
In 2013.
Following the completion of your formal education, is that when you started your career with the DCI laboratory?
No, I worked at what was then called DuPont Pioneer.
What type of work did you do for DuPont Pioneer?
I worked in research and regulatory and compliance.
And what types of research were you doing for that business entity?
It involved crop research.
How long were you with that particular organization before you joined the DCI laboratory?
Approximately 1 to 2 years.
Okay. Now, when you were hired at the DCI Crime Lab, did you go through some type of formal training?
Yes.
Describe what that training consisted of.
Initially, I was hired as a forensic science technician, and I received on-the-job training. And then I became a criminalist and received on-the-job training specific to DNA analysis, which is my primary role. And then once I began serving on the crime scene team, I attended 2 separate crime scene schools.
What is the function of the crime scene team?
It is to respond when requested to crime scenes throughout the state.
And then when you do respond to crime scenes, what type of role do you play in the investigation?
We are there to document, preserve, and collect any evidence.
What types of processes do you engage in at crime scenes?
Could you rephrase?
Certainly. So for example, if you go out to crime scenes, do you photograph the crime scene?
Yes.
All right. Are there times when you're involved in the collection of physical evidence?
Yes.
Okay. And when you respond to crime scenes, other than taking photographs, do you ever take videos of crime scenes to give us a real life perspective of the crime scene itself?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Now, were you working in that capacity on or about March 23rd of 2021?
Yes.
Prior to that morning, had you been contacted by any of your superiors requesting your assistance in an investigation conducted by the Davenport Police Department involving a child named Breasia Terrell who had been reported missing back on July 10th of 2020?
We, meaning my partner and I, had been contacted by Special Agent in Charge, Rick Ron, regarding some remains that had been located in the Davenport area.
Okay. And who was the other member of the crime scene team that went out to that location with you to process it?
Anna Young.
What address were you directed to?
We were first directed to arrive at the, could I please look at my notes?
Certainly. Would it help to refresh your recollection by looking at your notes?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, may the witness refresh her recollection.
She may.
We were requested to arrive at the Clinton County Annex building.
And then when you responded to the Clinton County Annex building, what would have been the time of your arrival at that took place?
Yes.
What types of information was shared with you and Anna Young for purposes of the task that you were to perform?
We were informed that skeletonized remains had been located and that we were requested to document and process the scene and then collect any items of evidence that were located.
Now, were you working in conjunction with a number of law enforcement officers who had responded out to the scene the previous evening and even that morning?
Yes.
In addition, did you work in conjunction with an anthropologist from the State Medical Examiner's Office identified as Dr. Heather Garvin?
Yes.
If you could describe for us then the working relationship that existed amongst you as a member of the crime scene team, law enforcement officers, and Dr. Heather Garvin so that we know how those processes played out relative to one another.
We all worked together. Our job was primarily to document, so take photographs, video, notes, and sketches, the scene first overall. And then we were assisting Dr. Garvin in locating and collecting remains.
Okay. Now, was there a video made of that scene before the process of collecting those skeletal remains began?
Yes.
And then as far as the photographs were concerned, was there a progression in how those photographs were taken?
Yes.
Explain the progression and how that process works.
The photographs begin as overalls to get a bigger picture or overall depiction of the scene, and then they will move closer in to the remains.
Okay, and then as the recovery process began, would you then take even more photographs to document what was present there at the site?
Yes, more photographs and overalls and closer photographs of specific items were also taken.
I want to direct your attention to an exhibit that we have up on the easel. Give me a moment so that I can look at the exhibit number. This is State's Exhibit number 41. Do you recognize what's depicted in this exhibit?
It appears to be a satellite image of the area around where the remains were.
Is this where you performed your functions on March 23rd of 2021?
Yes.
Right. Your Honor, may the record reflect that I am showing counsel what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 61. May I approach?
You may.
Okay. Ms. Poland, I'm handing you an envelope marked State's Exhibit number 61. Was there a disc that was prepared that the video you collected was downloaded onto for purposes of introducing into evidence at trial?
Yes.
Okay. And then so as far as State's Exhibits number 61 is concerned, I would tell you I've already uploaded that disc into our little disc player so that we don't have any delay associated with that. But is that what we're talking about when we talk about State's Exhibit 61?
Yes, I believe so.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move to introduce State's Exhibit number 61 and ask to publish it.
No objection. Exhibit 61 will be admitted.
All right.
And you may.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Poland, can you set the stage so that we understand how this video starts out and what it is capturing? And can you give us a perspective of that before we start to play it?
Yes. So I believe the video will start out on 270th Avenue, moving to the north.
Okay.
And it will show the area as we are moving closer towards the remains.
All right. So as you're moving north on 270th Avenue, at some point in time then, are we going to have a perspective developed of that steep incline or that roadway that goes down toward the area of the remains and the pond?
Yes, you will be able to see the steep incline.
Okay, thank you. Your Honor, would it be all right for the witness to narrate for us as we go through this video?
She may.
So in the back there, you can see the pond. And then the area where the remains are embankment is on the right side of the screen, and the video is being taken from 270th Avenue, and that is facing north. This is just a different perspectives, starting facing to the south and moving, that would be facing straight west and then moving towards the north more. And that is the embankment right there in the dirt. And it ends north.
And looking at this video, even though there is no plants that are blooming or no leaves on the trees, was the brush really, really dense?
Yes. So that is zooming in on the remains. You can see a white spot.
Is that where the skull of Breasia Terrell was located?
Yes. This is on the south side of, there's a circle drive there in the middle, which is, the south side is opposite of the remains. So again, the pond is in the back towards the west, and then the remains are about there.
Okay. Again, can we see the skull?
Yes.
With the zooming in of the camera, is it focusing on the skull where it's laying on the ground?
Yes. And then the camera is just moving further to the north, and it ends on the embankment there. So it actually goes all the way back around.
There are two access points that have been discussed. This particular access point, was that the shorter of the two access points down toward the area of the pond?
I cannot remember which was shorter.
At any rate, does the video show us those two separate drives into the
Yes.
area of the pond?
So now the video is within the crime scene tape, again, starting facing west. And you can see the remains somewhat through the trees there. There's also a slide, a shoe slide.
Is that the white object that we see there, just
Yes.
a little to the south of the skull?
So that's one of the embankments there. So this would be taken from west of the remains a little bit inside of the tape. So a little closer to the pond than to the road.
Are you closer to that brush line?
Yes.
And by brush line, I'm talking about on the brush line where the remains would have been encompassed.
Yes. So zooming in on where the remains are located. And then you can see one embankment on the left, and then the other is to the right of that.
There was discussion about a satellite center having been set up out here at the crime scene. That large RV, was that the satellite center?
Yes.
What are we seeing here now?
This is standing more in that brush line, again, just showing the area around and the remains, and then closer to the remains. Okay. So there's a tire there, and then next to that are the remains.
Can we get a really clear perspective of that skull at one point?
I believe so.
And then when you zoomed in just to the north of that tire, what was being depicted there?
There was additional remains located there. I'm not sure what they were.
Now, Deputy Wojciechowski had indicated that from the location of the remains, if you moved further north, that there essentially was a large rock wall that would create its own barrier. Is that what we can see here in the background?
Yes, I believe so.
And then what are you trying to show here at this point? Okay.
I think the remains that were a little further north of the main concentration.
As we look at that large rock that has the moss on it, can we see a portion of the skeletal remains associated with the skull?
Yes, there are some darker portions and then the whiter portions as well.
And additionally, were you able to see the hair associated with these human remains?
I'm not sure if you can see it in the video or not.
All right, we'll just leave that up to people who are watching it. What are you trying to show here?
Just showing the area to the north, just kind of showing what's above and behind.
As we see the area of the skeletal remains, even though there are no leaves on the trees and the vegetation obviously is, still dead, was there a significant amount of branches and just debris around those skeletal remains?
Yes, there was a large amount of plants and leaves.
Is it easier to see the slide that you talked about in relation to the skull?
Yes, it's at the bottom right. It's slightly blue with white.
All right. And then finally, what is being depicted right there in the video?
That just shows the team members that were present and the date and time and location.
Thank you. Once that process was completed, is this where you then started to document the scene with photographs?
Yes.
Okay. Did you take an extensive amount of photographs?
Yes.
I will represent to you that we have gone through and tried to narrow those down, all right? But for purposes of our record, Your Honor, may the record reflect that I'm showing counsel what's been marked as State's Exhibit 15-1 through 15-134. May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm handing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 15-1 through 15-134. I'd like for you to look through that exhibit and tell me if you recognize what's depicted.
Yes, they appear to be photographs or copies of photographs from this case.
Okay, and would that document just what we've already seen on the video, but then go through and document the evidence that was collected as well as skeletal remains?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move to introduce the group exhibit.
No objection.
Group exhibit 15 will be admitted.
May I publish, Your Honor?
You may.
Okay. I think what we'll do is, Colin, just for ease of the record, as I publish each photograph, what I'd like for you to do is just describe what's depicted in each image, and that's how we'll make a record of what this exhibit consists of. State's Exhibit 15-1.
That is what we call the scene marker, indicating the members and the location and the date.
Does that set forth your name and Ms. Young's name?
Yes.
15-2.
That is an image facing northwest, standing on 270th.
All right, so for purposes of our perspective, taking your pointer here, and then let's go to State's Exhibit 41. Just give us an idea generally where you're standing.
Approximately around here.
All right, State's Exhibit 15-3.
That is generally a similar photograph, possibly moving a little further north.
Now, if I could, I want to go back to 15-2. I want to direct your attention to the roadway, but then essentially the shoulder. And then again, going back to 15-3. As we look at this photograph, is there much of a shoulder along the roadway?
Not much.
Okay. And then relative to what shoulder there is, where we have a break in that shoulder is a pretty steep drop off of the roadway.
Yes.
State's Exhibit 15-4.
That is a view facing northwest from 270th Avenue. You can see the pond through the trees, and it is standing kind of on the edge of 270th.
15-5.
We have moved a little further to the north.
15-6.
View also from 270th, and you can see the pond, and you can tell that we're kind of moving north, kind of towards the embankment and where the remains are located.
15-7. And if it's more of the same, but just a progression forward, feel I mean, it's fine to say that.
Okay, it's a progression forward.
Okay. 15-8,
Progression forward.
15-9,
That is kind of the same. You get a bigger view of the road, and you cannot see the pond as well.
all right. Are we starting to see that roadway that goes down to the area of the remains?
Yes, I believe it's kind of where that white vehicle is.
15-10,
This is a view from 270th facing the opposite direction, so facing south.
15-12.
A view from 270th facing west. You can see the pond barely through the trees.
Okay, so when you're facing west, would you be looking in a direction toward Highway 61?
Yes,
All right, can we see Highway 61 though through these trees or vegetation?
I don't think so.
All right. 15-13.
Progression forward, moving towards the remains.
All right, and then I'm going to jump ahead on some of these photographs since we've got so many, just to get to a point where we start to see the development of some different perspectives. As we go to 15-16, did you take a photograph of the area on the east side of 270th Avenue?
Yes.
And this particular photograph, what is it showing?
This is showing the area east of where the embankment is. So the embankment would be behind the photographer.
All right, looking at State's Exhibit 15-17, is that a broader perspective?
Yes.
During this period of time then, along this area, the east side of the road, large chunks of concrete or rebar where this area was being used as essentially a dump site.
I don't recall seeing that.
All right, but this is what it looked like back then on March 23rd?
Yes.
Going to State's Exhibit 15-21.
This is a photograph from on 270th Avenue, facing west, and one of the embankments is in the bottom right corner of the photograph.
In other photographs or video we have seen, that steep embankment, it appears that it goes down and there's a circle drive around a large tree. Is this a good representation of that location?
Yes, the tree there kind of in the middle is the center sort of the circle drive.
Going to State's Exhibit 15-26.
So that is a picture of the embankment.
15-27.
A different perspective of the embankment.
(15-30), 15-31, 15-32, 15-33, 15-34. What is being shown in that progression of photographs?
Those show the remains, most specifically what appears to be the school, and then a blue and white slide.
I'd like to discuss what we have in State's Exhibit 15-38. As far as the location of the remains to what would be the shoreline for that pond, was it fairly close?
I guess define fairly close.
Well, why don't you go ahead and give us your perspective?
It was near it, I guess. I mean, maybe 20 yards,
Okay.
if I were to guess.
That's fine. That helps us understand its relationship to the pond. And as we get to State's Exhibit 15-47, what are we seeing here?
That is a close-up of the majority of the remains.
I want to use 15-48 because it appears the lighting is a little bit better here. Can we start to see the clothing items that were within these remains?
Yes.
From your perspective, can you see what it is? I know the lighting here isn't very good, but look there on the screen and tell me if you can see.
So in this photo, in the middle left, top left, above the tire kind of, there's a black area. Those appear to be bottoms of some sort.
Can you point to the screen so that we know what you're referencing? There's been testimony about a pair of black shorts that had the appearance of some type of netting. Is that what you are noting there?
Yes.
And as we go to 15-49, does it show the connection of those shorts to the lower limb or leg of those skeletal remains? Looking at that, and then I'm going to have you look at 15-50 as well.
Yes, I can only say that they appear to be black bottoms associated with remains.
All right. Now, I'm going to hand you 15-50 so that you can look at it up close. Do you see the shorts?
Yes,
And then do you see a portion of the skeletal remains here?
yes.
Let's go back to 15-49. Can you point out those shorts and then the skeletal remains that I was showing you there?
So that's what appear to be shorts.
Mhm.
And then here's the remains you were pointing out.
Okay. 15-51,
That is a close-up of the skull.
15-52,
Close-up of additional remains.
15-54.
A close-up of additional remains.
In this particular photograph, are we seeing what appears to be a leg of those skeletal remains with the foot?
Yes, it appears to be what could be a lower limb.
Sure. And then also additionally, we see a series of curved bones. Did that appear to be a potential rib cage?
I'm not an expert on human remains, but yes, it appears consistent with ribs.
15-55. I want you to look at this up close, and then I'll put it under the elbow. All right? In 15-55, as you had an opportunity to look at it up close, I'd asked you earlier, could you see hair mixed in within those remains?
I can see a dark brown, what appears to be potential hair.
Certainly. (15-58). Is this giving us yet a better perspective of that pair of shorts?
Yes.
Now, as the process of collecting those skeletal remains began, with the removal of debris, what process was being followed there?
The debris was removed and placed into buckets that were then additionally sifted through.
What was the purpose for sifting through the buckets?
To ensure we had located all of the remains that we could find and to locate any potential evidence.
Certainly. And then even after the debris was completed, were you involved with Dr. Heather Garvin in using a trowel to go through the soil, or did she simply engage in that process?
I believe we were also involved.
All right. I'm just going to jump forward because I think we're all very familiar generally with that area. But just to give a perspective, if we look at States Exhibit 15-79, describe what it is that we see developing in this photograph.
So as we were locating potential remains, we were marking them with pink flags. And so that is what this photo is depicting.
Okay. With the removal of the debris, was there photographs taken of various branches?
Yes.
Now, were the breaks on some of these branches of particular interest?
Yes.
And by breaks, I'm talking about the tips of those branches.
Yes.
States Exhibit 15-85, 15-86, 15-88, and even 15-90. And 15-91, as well as 15-92. What is it about the tips where those breaks occurred that was in?
During our debriefing, they mentioned that machete may have been used to cut branches. And so it was requested that we document the ends of the branches.
And is that why those photographs were taken?
Yes.
And then very simply, as we go through the progression of those photos, then they show all of the skeletal remains that were located and recovered.
Yes.
What further responsibilities did you have out there at the scene? County medical of the individual.
Mary Malcolm.
What role did Mary Malcolm play in this investigation?
She would have arrived on the scene and taken some documentation herself.
All right. Was Dr. Malcolm the individual then that would have taken control of those skeletal remains after they were placed in a body bag and sealed to be transported to the state medical examiner's office?
No, that was Charles Fleming.
And who is Charles Fleming?
He is the person who would have transported the remains.
Is he associated with the state medical examiner's office?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure, but he was responsible for doing the transport?
Yes.
All right. Did you author a report which basically identified what you did in the course of this investigation?
Yes.
And in that report, did it document just different types of articles that were collected from the scene outside of the skeletal remains?
Yes.
Your Honor, may the record reflect that I'm showing counsel what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 60. May I approach?
You may.
I'm handing you State's Exhibit 60. Now, in photographs that we observed from the state medical examiner's office, there were 3 articles of clothing that were contained within that body bag. Were those the articles of clothing that was recovered with the remains?
Yes.
What is State's Exhibit number 60?
It appears to be a copy of the report Anna Young and myself issued in this.
How is this document titled at the top?
With the laboratory's case number.
Okay. What is the laboratory case number?
2020-16859.
And relative to reports that were authored by the DCI, what report number is this?
3.
What date was this report generated?
April 8th, 2021.
And does it identify who's responsible for generating this report?
Yes.
Who?
Myself, Jennifer Pullen, and Anna Young.
All right. And then as far as the skeletal remains, what name was utilized for the skeletal remains at the time that they were recovered?
Jane Doe.
All right. And then is there offense date of March 23rd, 2021 incorporated within this document?
Yes.
Does this document then identify what would have been items of evidence that you either generated or you collected from the scene?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move to introduce State's Exhibit number 60.
No objection. Exhibit 60 will be admitted.
Okay. May I publish this, Your Honor?
You may.
Okay. As to State's Exhibit number 60, let's go through and I want you to identify what evidence is encompassed within this report under the section denoted items collected. Use your laboratory item number versus the agency item number.
Item 8 and 9 are crime scene images. And so that would be the photographs that we took at the scene. And then item 10 is the crime scene video.
All right.
Item 11 is the white and turquoise slide. Item 12 is a white t-shirt. Item 13 is a white plastic bottle. 14 is a red shirt. 15 is a Mary Kay makeup container. 16 are pieces of a broken white plastic bottle. And then 17 is a fired bullet, and 18 is a fired bullet that was deformed. And then 19 are the tree branches that were cut from the scene.
There's specific items that I want to talk with you about. Lab item number 12 with a description of one white t-shirt, and lab item, I believe, 13. Hold on, let me make sure I'm seeing that correctly. Let me get up close. Lab item 14 with a descriptor of the partial red shirt. Did you have any contact with Sergeant Christopher Mayer, who had come out to the scene and had ran the total station, taking measurements of various items of evidence that were located at the scene?
Yes.
All right. Now, for the white t-shirt and then that red shirt, were those the 2 articles of clothing that had been documented when he ran the total station that were away from the remains?
Yes, those were identified prior to our arrival, and they were documented. And he did run total station on those.
Okay. And then additionally, the white plastic bottle. How would you describe the appearance of that white plastic bottle?
It looked like it had been worn or weathered. There was no label remaining on it.
Was there any contents inside that bottle?
I did not open it, but it felt empty.
All right. Now, did you know that Clorox was an item of interest in the course of this investigation?
Yes.
Did this white plastic bottle take on the appearance of a bottle that Clorox bleach would have been sold in?
It was consistent with what various household chemicals would be in.
All right. And then going down to the collected item, I believe it's 16, described as pieces of a broken white plastic bottle. Again, would that have been consistent with the other white plastic bottle that we're talking about in 13?
Yes, it appeared to be consistent with what you would expect a broken white bottle to look like.
Okay. Can you speak to this issue? Sergeant Pfeiffer had indicated that there was a white plastic bottle that had been submitted to the DCI laboratory for testing for the presence of Clorox. Was this the white plastic bottle that would have been transferred over to one of our criminalists for testing? And if you don't know that, that's fine. But if you do, I'd like for you to speak to that topic.
I don't know for certain.
Okay, thank you. Did that conclude your involvement in this matter?
Yes.
Your Honor, had I moved to introduce this exhibit?
I believe you had.
That's what I thought.
Submitted.
I have no further questions.
No cross-examination.
You may step in.
Your Honor, the state calls Mark Polos to the stand.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please have a seat.
Please state your name for the record and spell both your first and your last name.
My name is Mark Poulos, M-A-R-K, Poulos, P-O-U-L-O-S.
Mr. Poulos, if you could, describe for us what you do professionally for a living.
Well, right now I'm retired. I'm a retired police officer, and I teach at the University of Iowa in Augustana. I teach scuba at the University of Iowa and then Augustana College.
Certainly. And then which agency were you employed with when you were actively involved in the field of law enforcement?
I spent 33 years as a police officer for the city of Rock Island and 5 years as a chief of police out in Coal Valley.
In what capacities did you work as a law enforcement officer?
In Rock Island, I did a little bit of everything. I spent several years undercover, spent several years doing crime scene investigation. In other words, it was called a police specialist. And what we would do is we would lift the fingerprints and do the photographs and measurements and things of that sort. And then we coupled that with me as a trainee or field training officer.
Certainly. Now, I want to ask you about whether or not you have become professionally involved in a field outside of your responsibilities as a law enforcement officer that actually focuses on the issue of rescue and recovery.
Yes, in 2011, we formed a nonprofit at the request of some local agencies, called ourselves the Big River Rescue and Recovery Dive Team, so that we could provide services to first responding agencies needing underwater divers.
Where is Big River Rescue and Recovery Dive Team based out of?
Right now, it's based out of Illinois. It was based out of Scott County, and then we moved it over to Illinois here within the last, I want to say, 6 months.
Certainly. And then do you work with law enforcement agencies on both sides of the river? Okay. Now, what is the focus of the Big River Rescue and Recovery Dive Team?
When an agency calls us, whether it's to recover a vehicle or a drowning victim, we report to the incident commander on the scene. We ask them what services they need. We will do a risk assessment of the environment. There have been times when it's been too risky to put a diver in, and we would tell them that, we're not going to put a diver in that environment. I've been called in to recover evidence underwater on a couple of different occasions from different agencies. And whatever the agency needs from us, if we can do it safely, then that's what we try to provide.
Can you describe for us the different environments the dive team has worked in since this particular nonprofit organization was started?
We do a lot of our work in the Mississippi River, as long as the current doesn't get above a certain level that I will call it off. We do work in the Rock River. We do work in ponds. Any environment where we train, and that's what we try to provide. Well, we started off as open water divers. They have to learn how to dive, and many of the team. I am a public safety diver instructor, so I hold my divers to a higher level. I have them trained in black water conditions. I have them trained in a full face mask. I have them trained in dry suits. We practice with surge patterns. We will put things out into the river and have the divers go out and perform different types of surge patterns. We also go into confined water areas and practice escaping from being entangled, running out of air. Some things that we hope don't happen, but we prepare for them.
Certainly. How many members do you have that work on the recovery dive team?
Right now we have, and it fluctuates. I've got 4 that are very active. I've got several others that are less active, but they're still on our roster.
Certainly. I'd like to direct your attention, if I could, to the date of April 3rd of 2021. Prior to that date, were you contacted by the Davenport Police Department to assist in an investigation that they had been conducting for a period of time involving a child, Breasia Terrell, who had been reported missing on July 10th of 2021 or 2020?
Yes.
Okay. Who made that contact with you?
I believe it was Sergeant Pfeiffer.
Okay. What was the nature of the contact?
Basically, he asked me if we could help them recover, search a pond to recover some evidence.
All right. Now let's set the stage for your involvement in this investigation. Did Sergeant Pfeiffer discuss with you that there had been the discovery of skeletal remains in the area of Kunau Implement in a rural area of Clinton County back on March 22nd of 2021?
Yes.
And then did he describe for you the recovery of those skeletal remains, which occurred on March 23rd of 2021?
I didn't ask for a lot of details, but he did say that there was a person or skeletal remains found.
Okay. With the recovery of those skeletal remains, were there items of evidence that had been recovered that prompted reaching out to your organization?
Yes.
Explain.
There were some projectiles that were found.
All right. And in that discussion, did Sergeant Pfeiffer talk with you about officers searching that area to see if they could find any casings?
Yes.
Did he give you an indication that they weren't able to find any casings in the area where the skeletal remains were located?
Yes.
All right. So, Mr. Poulos, if you could, speaking to your own experience as a law enforcement officer, if there are bullets that are located with skeletal remains, but there's no casings in the area, what would that suggest to you as to the type of gun that would have been used?
Without any casings, my first assumption would be it would be a revolver, because a revolver does not eject casings.
Okay. So then, did that form the basis for the request made of your team?
It may have. I mean, I go into it with an open mind.
Certainly. So
that if it was a different type of item that was found, we're not going to limit ourselves to one specific item. But if we're limiting ourselves to anything that could be used as a weapon.
And that was a poor question on my part. Was the presence of projectiles, the bullets, the basis for reaching out to your team?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. So what did they want you to do?
They wanted us to search. There was a pond just to the west of where the remains were found. They wanted us to do a search of the pond to see if we could find any weapons, 9mm, anything.
Just weapons.
We also did a search in the area where the remains were found with a metal detector to see if anything had been pushed down into the dirt that the investigators may have missed.
Certainly. I want you to look at State's Exhibit 41. Do you recognize what's depicted in that photograph?
Yes.
Or I should say aerial image. Describe what you recognize.
That is the pond that we performed the search.
Okay. What date did the search take place on?
That was April 3rd, I believe.
Before doing a search, is there any type of assessment of the area where you were going to be performing your functions?
Yes, we do a risk assessment. In an area like this, and again, I've had several experiences diving in this type of environment where you have overhanging trees or brush or something inside the pond where a diver could get entangled. So as a safety measure, we try to make sure that, what do we have on the bottom? It's kind of a topographical assessment. And then we can also take a look and see what kind of a search pattern would give us the best results.
Okay. Speak to the topic of search patterns. Why are search patterns developed and used?
The search patterns are developed so that they, in many cases, you have very limited visibility. We always go on a tether, which is a line, goes from the diver to a line tender. In our situation, we have a full face mask that has communications where the diver can talk to the line tender and back and forth. The line tender can tell the diver, you need to go to your right or to the left. The purpose of the line on us, twofold. Number one, it helps, provides us a safety line. And number two, it helps the diver orient himself in the lake so that he doesn't do what's called a J hook, or he's going in one pattern and then does a J hook around. So then he really gets off guard. So he needs to keep the line tight. He needs to keep the line either one shoulder or the other, and then take the instructions from the line tender on the surface.
By using a search pattern then, is that a way to ensure that every portion of that body of water is searched?
Yes.
All right. Now, it sounds to me like you will have men on shore.
Yes.
And individuals who go into the water.
Yes.
What a line tender is and how they facilitate the search.
Okay, a line tender, in this case, we were going to do what's called a pendulum sweep or an arc sweep. So the line tender will the diver will tighten the rope depending upon where we're going to start. If we're going to start out and work in, or start in and work out, the line tender will develop where we are going to start that search. And then the line tender will keep the line taut to where the diver does an arc pattern. When he gets to a certain point, and we look at the bubbles that are coming up. When he gets to a certain pattern, the line tender says stop, and then make your turn to your left or to your right. The diver turns to the left or the right, reorients the rope on his body, and then gets maybe 2 or 3 inches. If it's a small item, in case of a vehicle or something like that, he may get 2 or 3 feet. If it is a person, that's usually a kind of a cross between, depending upon the orientation or the size of the person. So size in this case, if you're looking for a small item, you're going to have a very small amount, maybe 6 inches, maybe 12 inches to do that path. When you're using specialized equipment, as we were in this case, we were using a underwater metal detector, professional grade underwater metal detector. You have a little bit more leeway depending upon the sweep that the diver is able to do. If the diver could do maybe a 2-foot sweep, then you can expand that just a little bit. And it's very, pardon the pun, it's very fluid. you know, it's a very dynamic situation, so that you have to, nothing is ever the same.
With the line tender working on the shore itself, I would assume then he has the ability to see that line and watch the movement of that line.
He sees the bubbles.
Sees the bubbles.
And again, the bubbles, the line, the position of the line should somewhat correlate with the bubbles.
Certainly. All right. And so then by virtue of those variables, is that how you're able to ensure that every portion of that body of water is searched?
Yes.
Okay. Now, identify first of all of the members of the team that responded out to the area of Kunal Implement on April 3rd, and then what role each individual played in these efforts.
We had Ben Wilson was our primary diver. He's been with our team for several years. Steve Ebel, he was one of our co-founders of the team. He was going to be the line tender and communications person. We had Sean Cosson, who was going to act as our what we call a 90% diver. So he is almost ready to go in the water. If we had go in if there was an entanglement. My second task would be to go out, if any evidence was found, to go out and make sure that the evidence was kept in a water environment similar to the area in which it was found.
Why do you want to keep any object that is found within the water environment that it has been located?
When you take metal out of the water, oxygen hits it and it starts the item. We try to keep it inside the water, a water vessel with the water, the same water in which it was found. In other words, I wouldn't put it in a bath of salt water, or I wouldn't put it in a batch of vinegar or something like that. I want to keep it in the same water of the lake.
Okay. And then let's go back and speak to your experience as a law enforcement officer and even having worked in evidence collection. As a law enforcement officer, were you involved in firearms and tool mark examination request?
Yes.
And whenever a firearm is submitted to a state laboratory, is one of the requests made to determine whether or not the gun would be a functioning gun?
I have never filled that portion of it out. I have boxed them up. I turn them over to our evidence technician who mails them out. I will make sure that if it's, and most of the times it is in a dry container vis-a-vis a box, and it would be secured in a box. And most of with my experience, all of them were unloaded.
Certainly.
So before they were sent to the crime lab.
Yeah, but at the crime lab, is the crime lab going to determine whether or not that firearm is functioning if a request is made to make that determination?
That would be up to the crime lab, and the detective would be involved in that case.
And so then when we go back and we talk about keeping, if there is a gun found within the water environment that it is found, is that important for any type of later analysis to determine if that gun is a functioning gun?
It will, again, the purpose for keeping it in water is to keep it from rusting. And anytime you have rust, you have a deterioration of the metal, which could cause a problem.
Certainly. All right. So let's get back on track. I diverted for a moment. Then who else did we have out there at the scene performing certain functions?
The other person we had was Tom Murchie. And
Spell
Tom
Murchie for our record.
Merchie. Tom is a retired Illinois State Police evidence technician.
What role did Mr. Murchie fulfill on April 3rd of 2021?
He basically took the times, took notes for our dive team so that we know how much air went in, how much air went out, what patterns we did, who went in at what time, when did they exit the water, so that we have notes that would assist the agency that requested us.
So essentially, was he acting as a scribe for this
Yes.
operation?
Yes.
Let's be kind to our court reporter. Spell Ebel, if you could.
Ebel.
All right.
And that's Stephen.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. So then, by virtue of your assessing the environment that the operations were to be performed on April 3rd, is there anything else that we need to discuss as far as what you felt you would need to carry out this operation?
Again, we had the detectives on scene, and so anything that we would find, they had the vessels to put any evidence that was recovered, so that I could. And matter of fact, I did take the vessel out to Ben after he had found the item under the mud, under the silt, so that we put it in the paint can, brought it back. The gun was too big for the paint can. So when I got closer to shore, I was able to get another vessel, which was a blue bucket or blue pail, and I put the paint can and everything inside the blue pail with water. So that, and then I handed it to the detectives on shore.
All right, and then would they have transferred it into
vessel that they had? There was a rectangular vessel there. I don't know. I didn't watch them put it after I delivered it to the detective. Then I went back to my truck and started to get my gear off.
Okay, all right. So now let's talk about that portion of the story. The team arrives.
Yes.
Walk us through that.
We did the topographical search with a sonar to see what kind of depth we have. Is there any underwater obstructions? After we did a very brief once around the lake pond, we came back, put the boat on shore. Met with the detectives and the team. made assignments to the team. We followed the detectives down. This is the first time I'd been on the property. We then took the metal detector and went over the area surrounding the area where the remains were found. Did not get any hits. By hits, I mean active alerts on the metal detector. After we did that, we mask and all of the diving equipment that we use. Then we decided that we were going to do that pendulum sweep. And that's I love that sweep because it is so controlled on the surface. So, you know, you have the time, you have the control that we prefer to have, or to at least give a reasonable assurance that we have covered the entire area that needs to be covered. We were searching on the north side, started off searching on the north side of the pond, where if this picture down below here, it would have been.
And let me go ahead and put this exhibit up. This is State's Exhibit 42. I'm going to put that up on the diagram so that you can show us what you are referring to.
May
And
I
then you've got that pointed, yes, please, if you could.
mash that down? You may. So we had our dive operations were right in this area here. We had our diver deploy, and we started searching in this area to the north. All right. After a while, the diver came back and said he didn't have enough weight on. That does present a problem. So he came back to the shore, got some more weight on, and continued searching. Came back and was going to go search. We found out that there was some concrete in there that had some metal rebar or some sort in there. So it was really giving us a lot of readings. He would reach down. You know, this is not it. This is not it. This is an area that is going to be hard to search. So we went over to the south side. Now during that time, Tom Murchie was right here. Steve Evil was right here. I went back over here to, this is my truck. I went back over here to my truck to stay out of their way, to not try to tell them where they had to search. That was the job of Steve Evil. Tom Murchie was right in this area here, and Sean Cosson was right in this area here.
For purposes of our written record, when you talk about Tom Murchie and Sean Cosson, are they close to shore?
Yes, they're on shore.
Okay, and then again, for purposes of our record, there is that steeper access road that if you were to travel down it, right, essentially that if you drive straight, then that's the portion where you would have entered the water,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yeah. We launched right in this area right here.
And then the vehicle that you said that you no.
Brownish maroon. It changes color with the light.
All right, all right. And then, of course, then thereafter was there the discovery that was made.
Yes, Ben was directed in this area right here.
For our record, what direction are you indicating?
That would be south.
Okay,
Okay. So he was going to the south. I was over here, and I heard the comms when Ben said that he found an object. And then he said it is a firearm or a gun. At that point, the detectives wanted to get a buoy out here so that they could get a picture of where the object was found. They launched or tried to launch a drone over to get some pictures. I don't know if they got any from that or not. But a buoy was placed out here. I entered the water and went out with the can to Ben Wilson. I could see the visibility was pretty poor, about, I want to say 7 8 feet of water, very soft silt. And any movement in there would just cloud the water up where we couldn't see it all. So we went out to Ben. The weapon was placed in the can. I waited with Ben. We went back to shore. I handed the I handed the can over. I notified Steve that I would need another vessel because the gun you wouldn't be able to put it in that container. And so to keep it in the water, they brought the other bucket down. I filled it with water, put the can in there, and handed it up to the detective on shore.
Mr. Poulos, if you look at that body of water, do you see that white dot in the area that you saw indicated the gun was recovered? Is that the buoy that law enforcement asked to be placed there to mark the location of the recovery of the gun?
I believe it was. Yes.
All right, go ahead, take your seat. Thank you. And then, Mr. Poulos, just very simply, what type of gun was it?
It was a revolver, appeared to be a .38 caliber.
Thank you. Did that conclude your involvement in this matter?
Yes.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Waters?
Just briefly, Mr. Poulos, the five of you went out to this location on April 3rd of 2021 at the request of Sergeant Piper, right?
I'm sorry, you'll have to speak out.
The five of you went out to this location on April 3rd of 2021 at the request of Sergeant Piper.
Yes. Yes, we hadn't done a lot of cases together because at that point, most of my career was on the Illinois side.
Sure. Okay, so is this the first time that he had requested you and your team to dive?
I had been contacted by a non-law enforcement agency to see if we would be available to dive earlier when the missing person first was reported. I think that was July 10th of 2020. And I couldn't respond because, number one, I asked, is there a target? Do we have an area to search? And if you just tell me the Mississippi River, that's not going to be doable because, it would be a waste of your time and mine as well.
Sure, and I understand that. So as you get here, I think you testified that Sergeant Pfeiffer had told you they're looking for a gun or bullet casings.
Yes.
Okay, so you knew before you got into that water, that's what you're looking for.
Yes.
Okay, so then where you had just pointed out on that picture, is that the only place, I'm gonna say about 50% of that pond you searched?
I wouldn't even say 50%. I would say more of a 25% before the item was recovered.
Okay, and how long was it until that item was recovered?
Well, we started about 10 o'clock and it was recovered sometime around 11:30, something like that, maybe 11. I'm not sure exactly what time it was recovered. It was in the report. But it wasn't very long after we changed and started searching south. It wasn't too many sweeps before Ben said that he had recovered the item.
Okay, so
or an item, whether it's the item, it was a gun that he recovered.
You found a gun, right?
Yes.
Okay, so after you found the gun, did you just stop the search?
Yes.
Why?
We returned the gun to the detectives and asked them if they wanted further, and they didn't really want us to. There was no point in going any further in that area. We work for the agency that called us.
Okay, that's all I have.
Mr. Poulos, when the gun was recovered, did you have an opportunity to see the cylinder and to see if there was at least the casings that you could observe from a portion of the cylinder on the side?
Yes.
All right. And then you weren't involved at the scene during the time that these projectiles were recovered. Would that be fair to say?
I was not.
All right. But at any rate, through the course of any investigation, if there are casings within the revolver and there are bullets that are recovered, is there going to be a submission to a crime lab to examine the bullets and examine casings or even markings unique to the gun to see if there's a match?
Yes.
All right. And even if the bullets are in bad shape, are there other ways that you can look at various characteristics and see if that particular bullet would be consistent with being fired from a specific gun?
It could be compared to a gun with the same caliber. Because the calibers are different. Like a 38 is a 0.357 inches and a 9mm is 0.355 inches. The different types of landing grooves would virtually create tool marks on the projectile. Whether or not the projectile was damaged would determine whether or not they could make a solid, an exact match.
Certainly, certainly. All right, I've got one other question I want to ask of you. How far was the gun in that body of water from the shoreline?
I want to say 50 to 60 feet.
Given the distance of the gun from the shoreline, would it have been easy to have tossed that gun out into the body of water about 50 to 60 feet?
Depending upon the person, but I would say yes.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
You may sit down.
Thank you.
We'll take our afternoon break at this time. We'll reconvene at approximately 3:20. Thank you.
All right, y'all. Let's see what's going on. Hold on. Okay. All right, we're gonna come back to this guy, and then we're gonna be done.
Authorities or someone from the state DCI reaching out. Authority. Yes, looking at State's Exhibit 42, do you recognize State's Exhibit 42 and what's depicted?
Do I recognize that?
Yes. How do you recognize the depiction in that exhibit?
Is this the county road down here?
Yes, and if you look down below here on State's Exhibit 41, which is up there on the easel, I think that'll
Okay.
give you a better perspective. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, we,
let me put State's Exhibit 41 up there for you so that you know what to refer to.
we approach from the right over here.
You've got a pointer behind your chair there. If you want to look just off to your right, Mr. Evil.
Oh, a pointer?
Yeah, and then for our written record, describe what location you are referring to by street names.
270 what?
270th Avenue?
Yes.
Let me do this because it might help, and I'll do an orientation where I'm going to turn this diagram around
Okay.
so that north is to the top of the
Yes.
diagram. Does that help?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, go ahead.
So we came down in this area here, I believe.
Okay,
With a little access.
and that access road, is that the one that leads to the pond that we see? There was testimony provided about that.
Yeah, it looked to me like a quarry, old abandoned quarry.
All right. Now, describe what your role was going to be
mission.
Mission, there we go. Thank you for the word.
What's my role? What was my role? I was a line tender, which I had, Ben Wilson was a primary diver with a metal detector. And I was the line tender and communications to the divers. Okay.
Describe what your responsibilities were as the line tender.
Okay. So in a case like that right there, the visibility being low, like 1 to 2 feet possibly, and then when you kick up the silt and mud down to maybe 0. So the idea is to theorize where the target might be, and then develop a pattern that we call a pendulum sweep. Starting from low probability, working to high probability, in order to establish a decent pattern and with a little bit of overlap, so that you may even repeat a little bit of where you've been through. Like if you're working for a large object, you can have a bigger, pattern. Small subject, you're pretty tight. So what the line tender does is to kind of directs that, because you can see the bubbles. A diver alone in an environment like that, if he was going to just go out and just dead reckon, he'd probably doing just great big circles and not really have any idea where he's at. So the line tender is directing it, watching the bubbles, and then when you run out of room with your line, you pull them in or you let them out and just overlap maybe a foot in a case like this, and then so you can establish that in your mind that you've covered pretty thoroughly. And so then you communicate with the diver what you want him to do, and you can go where other people can hear you too. You can put it on audio, and other people in the area can hear what's going on.
Are all of the members of the team then equipped with some type of communications equipment so that they can hear all of the conversations that are occurring?
In this case, we had 2 headphones.
All right.
Okay, and so they could hear 2 divers, and then it comes back to the comm box, and you can put that on audio, or you can just have it privately.
Now, I want to go back to an earlier statement that you had made. When you came to the scene and you were looking at the scene, you indicated that you come up with a theory of where a potential item may be located. When you arrived there at the scene, were you shown the location of where Breasia Terrell's remains had been located?
Yes, ma'am.
And was that fairly close to what I'm going to call the shoreline there on what would be the east side of the pond?
It's fairly close, like maybe
Okay.
50 or 60 feet, yeah.
All right. And then so knowing that her skeletal remains were within 50 to 60 feet of that shoreline, how did that variable play into the theory that was developed as far as locations that you were going to start to look within that body of water?
Well, the possibility that somebody could walk to the shore and chuck a firearm, pistol is what they thought. That's what developed the plan.
Certainly. So,
Was, the
go ahead.
pattern, we want to cover how far could it go, grown person, and how short could it go. So that's how we developed the plan.
All right. And so with that being said, then, did you work in that body of water that would have been closer to the shore versus going out to the far western shore?
No, we didn't start up really close.
Mhm.
And we got into a debris field of, must have been demolition concrete with rebar in it. So as Ben was searching with the metal detector, he's picking up the rebar. So every time he'd look at something, it was a chunk of concrete, and it was not so, the metal detector was pretty much not so useful. So we redirected him to still a probable area, but away from that, trying to get away from that debris field. And another diver was just groping by hand, looking to see if we could come up with something. So it wasn't long after that move from a north direction, basically, to a south direction. It wasn't very long, and he found a pistol.
All right.
A revolver, I'm sorry.
A revolver. Sergeant Pfeiffer had talked about making a request of the team to place a buoy in the water to mark the location of where the gun was recovered. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And then did you have any involvement in setting that buoy out there so that that location could be documented in some way?
My involvement was I directed Ben not to move, stay where you're at. Then there's some discussion, and I'm not sure who came up with the buoy idea, but I believe it was Sean took that buoy out there and marked it. And he was still in the same position, marked it for the detectives for, I guess, record keeping or whatever.
Okay. If you could, the buoy that was set out in that body of water.
Trying to recall.
And if you don't recall, that's fine.
I don't want to make a bad guess.
Sure, absolutely.
50 feet to maybe 75.
All right,
maybe,
all
something
right.
like that.
And does that essentially give us a very good perspective of your role and how you would have worked with this operation?
Would you ask that question again?
Yes. Does this give us a good perspective of your role then as the line tender and how you would have worked relative to this
Yeah, I
operation?
think so.
All right. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
I have no questions.
You may step down.
Your Honor, the state would call Benjamin Wilson to the stand.
you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Please have a seat.
Please state your name for the record.
Benjamin Wilson.
Typical spelling?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson, what is it that you do for a living?
I am a independent residential contractor.
What company do you work for?
Wilson Residential Construction.
Outside of that, are you associated with any organization that you perform professional responsibilities for?
Yes.
What's the nature of the professional organization you're associated with?
It is a rescue and recovery dive team.
Is that the Big River Rescue and Recovery Dive Team?
Yes.
How did you become associated with that organization?
My dive instructor was a board member on the dive team. I learned to scuba dive from him, and he immediately saw talent and asked me to come with him to join and learn how to become a rescue diver.
Certainly. How long have you been associated with this organization?
Since 2010, I believe.
Okay. And over the course of your involvement with this organization, can you describe for us the different types of rescue and recovery missions you've been involved with?
We've had countless recoveries, most of the time recoveries. I can't think of any rescues. We do work in a rescue capacity for like polar plunges and things like that, but we've never actually had to perform a rescue. We've been able to handle anything before it happens. As far as recoveries go, though, we've had everything from vehicles to bulldozers to bodies to evidence recovery, all the way down to we were in a pond and recovered a woman's wedding ring. So
certainly. And what types of bodies of water are you experienced in working?
Everything from Swift River, black water conditions or better. But yeah, the worst, the Mississippi River with zero visibility.
Describe doing any type of recovery efforts in the context of a pond and what challenges, if any, a pond would present for you as a diver.
So there are a few. Firstly, visibility. Many ponds have poor to no visibility. They also have obstructions in them, which can be anything from concrete to some people will like throw docks in the water and just let them collapse. Most often, though, it's trees. Trees will fall in there, and now there's an entangulation hazard. And then in addition to that, some ponds have chemicals in them that you don't really want to be exposed to, and fishing hooks and things like that that can cut you.
All right. What types of equipment do you wear then when you're working in an environment like a pond that presents those potential hazards?
If we know that there are hazards such as chemicals and things like that, we will wear what's called a dry suit. It is a plastic rubber suit that goes over the top of your clothing, so I can be wearing sweatpants, sweatshirt, things like that, and it keeps me basically completely encapsulated. We also use full face masks that will keep our face out of the water. It also gives us the ability to have underwater communications, to be able to talk to topside and let them know what we're either seeing or feeling or experiencing.
Okay, I'm going to just get very direct in my questions. Mr. Poulos has already come in and he's provided a really wonderful foundation for us, so that we've got a good perspective of the functions that you perform. But I want to direct your attention to the events of April 3rd of 2021. Were you involved in searching a pond just south of Kunau Implement in the northern portion of Clinton County?
Yes, I was.
Set the stage for your involvement and what occurred on that day.
I got a call the previous night from Mark Poulos saying that there was need of a dive team the following day, that we were going to be doing some evidence recovery, and he'd like me to be the primary diver in that. The next morning we showed up in the morning. They were out there with a boat, just getting a kind of a lay of the land, just to try to figure out, how deep was it? Was there anything in there? Things like that. It was determined that I would be the primary diver and I would do a sweep pattern. Steve Ebel, who was another team member of ours, was going to run comms and hold the rope for me, and we would perform a pendulum-looking sweep. So basically, they would start me out a little bit away from the shore. I would keep the rope taut, and I would kind of do an arc pattern, right? A little bit more rope, and I'd do an arc pattern the opposite way, and a little more rope, and just kind of work myself out in a fan shape out further and further into the water. I was given a underwater metal detector, so that way I could help aid in that sweep, and because we were looking for a metal object. So I was using that in my search. As I searched to the one side, I'm going to call it the right side.
And if you would like to look at States Exhibit 42, so that will give you a perspective. We've introduced a diagram of that area. I would represent to you that north would be the top of the diagram, south to the bottom, and obviously, if you're looking at it, to your right would be east, and to your left would be west.
So as I was sweeping towards the north-hand side, there was a lot of concrete rubble that had been thrown in there by someone. That concrete contained wire mesh that was within it. So when I was sweeping on that north side, the metal detector would go off frequently because I'm hitting these stones. So I have to feel in and around the stone, disregard it out of reach, and then continue on. So towards the north side of the pond, it took a lot longer to search over there as it did when we moved further south. Further south, that there wasn't the concrete debris. It was mostly just mud and muck.
Okay. Now, when you were working the northern portion of that pond, was that in the area of the shoreline on the east side of the pond?
Yes.
Okay. As the metal detector would go off, would you then go down to try and discern what the item was that was triggering the metal detector?
Yeah, so what I would do is as I was sweeping with my right hand with a metal detector, with my left hand just feeling the dirt and stuff in the area. So when the right hand would hear something go off, because I had earphones that I could hear the metal detector go off. When it went off, I would have to set the metal detector down on top of that object where I was getting the best tone, and then reach to the end of the metal detector, feel in and around and feel what was that detecting, move that again out of reach, and then hear in that area again and make sure that not only was there nothing under it, but I wasn't getting that tone any longer. And so then I'd continue my search.
Answer this question for me if you could. I've got an image in my mind that actually you are walking on the bottom of this pond. Is that how it works as opposed to actively
Crawling would be
swimming?
a better explanation.
Sure.
It's difficult to walk. You're more on all fours crawling around, but I'm not swimming, that's for sure.
Okay.
I'm crawling around on my hands and knees.
And by virtue of your crawling around on your hands and knees, does that give you a greater ability to discern what type of object that metal detector has alerted on?
Yes.
And then for all of the hits that you got on the north side of that body of water, were you able to rule out any of those items as being a handgun?
Yes, especially considering I'm a contractor, so I'm quite familiar with what concrete rubble feels like, looks like, and everything else. There was a little bit of visibility in the pond. It just depended on how badly I was mucking it up. The more I stir it up, the less I can see. But there was some visibility. So if I brought the rock closer to my face, I could kind of see it a little bit and get rid of it. But everybody should be able to kind of imagine what a large concrete boulder feels like as opposed to a handgun.
Okay, so then as you moved toward the south side of that body of water, again, on what would be the eastern portion, describe the developments in that area.
So that area was very mucky. There was just a lot of mud and silt at the bottom, but no tones from the metal detector. So as I'm sweeping towards the south side, I got really strong tone, which for that area seemed a bit unusual. I was expecting that it might be something else, an anchor or another maybe piece of concrete or something like that. So when I felt down to the end of it, I felt a revolver. So I told Topside on my underwater communications that I had found the object that we were looking for. I could hold it up to my face and I could see that it was a revolver.
All right, and then describe the steps taken to collect the revolver and then follow a chain of custody.
Sure. So once I found the revolver, I let Topside know that I had found it. I then spent, to my best memory, 30 minutes laying on the bottom, holding on to this thing, waiting for Topside to figure out what it is they wanted me to do. I just had to hold fast. So the police were deciding how did they want to recover it, what did they want to do, how did we want to get that back, things like that, so on and so forth. They also told me that at some point they would like to place a buoy on that so that way they could see from Topside exactly where I was underwater. So I'm waiting for further instructions. Eventually it was decided that Mark Poulos was going to bring down a paint can, and he was going to have me place the revolver in the paint can, and then he was going to bring that back to the police who were, there watching everything go on. So he was going to bring that paint can back. He brought the paint can down to me. I tried to place the revolver inside of it, but it wasn't. We were trying to, so we're taught to control the evidence and make sure that we put everything we have inside of a container. So when we bring the container back, it contains everything that we had. The revolver could only fit about 3/4 of the way inside of the paint can. It was just too large for the opening. So he radioed to Topside, hey guys, I'm going to need a bigger vessel for this. So he brought the paint can back, keeping it underwater, and they brought down a bucket. So he filled the bucket full of water and put the paint can inside the bucket and then handed the bucket directly to the police.
Certainly. And then speak to one final issue so that we understand how that buoy is attached to that location. Can you walk us through the physical mechanics of that?
So another team member of ours, Sean, he initially went in the water because we were thinking because of that rubble, this is going to take me a long time. We didn't want to be there 3 days looking for this. So he was just going to help aid in that. So he was already in the water, suited up. Once we found it, everybody stopped everything while I was waiting there. He went back up to shore. They gave him a metal weight with a rope attached to it, with a buoy attached to that, so that way we could show exactly where we were. Once I placed the revolver inside of the paint can and Mark brought that back up to shore, Sean carried out the buoy because I was still at the location. I never moved my hand from where it was. As soon as they brought that back to the location, I shoved the weight down inside the little hole that created. And then everybody got out of the water because they were going to use, I think it was a drone or something like that to take an aerial kind of like photograph of where that buoy was.
Certainly. And then can we, well, just based on what happened there, was the weight sufficient to hold that buoy in place?
Yes.
Okay.
The buoy's not very big, but the weight, again, this is very, very mucky. Think of a thick pudding. So when I had that hole, I shoved that weight 1.5 feet down in that muck. So honestly, to pull that back up took quite a lot of effort.
Your Honor, may I approach?
You may.
We have some aerial photographs that we had taken of that area. But what was the color of the buoy?
I couldn't say. I don't remember.
Okay, at any rate, what I want you to do is I want you to look at our state's exhibit. Let me try and just take down one here. State's exhibit 42, and I'm going to have you look up close.
Okay.
Okay, just look up really close.
Yep.
You see the buoy?
I do.
Okay, all right. And then just take the pointer so that we can verify what is the buoy within that body of water.
So it would be right there. There's a white buoy right there. Again, the rubble with the concrete is over here on this side of it. And we were doing a pendulum sweep going back and forth. So that's where I hit that. So I hung out in that area for a long time, waiting for them to give me further instructions. And that's where I shoved that down in the muck and placed the buoy.
All right, once you got out of the water, given the placement of the skeletal remains.
Yes.
I'm asking the question, but actually let me throw something in there to lay foundation. Did they show you where the skeletal remains were located?
Yes.
So when you saw the location of the skeletal remains, how close was it in proximity to that shoreline?
How far was the remains to the shoreline?
Yeah. And I'm not asking for just.
Yeah, I'm only going to be able to give you an approximate, and mind you, this has been 2 years, but 250 feet maybe?
Certainly. Could you easily walk to that shoreline from where the skeletal remains were?
For sure.
And then if you're standing there at that shoreline to chuck a revolver into the body of water at the location that you found it, would that be doable?
Very easy.
Okay, I have no further questions.
You may step down. Thank you.
Your Honor, this is all of the witnesses that we have lined up for today. And if we could, can we discuss schedule?
We may.
Okay. Your Honor, tomorrow, and then let me go ahead. I'll escort this witness. Tomorrow we have our two criminalists, Mike Schmidt and Brandon Stepansky coming from the DCI. The only other witness that we would have would be Detective Hammis. Her testimony is going to take a while. With Joel, and Joel was going to discuss it with Chad. Would the court be fine with us just presenting those two witnesses and then recognizing that Detective Hammis may take a period of time? We'll conclude the state's case in chief on Monday if the court's fine with that.
That would be perfectly fine. Do you believe starting at 9 o'clock is sufficient for those two witnesses or not?
Oh, no, it's more than sufficient. I don't even know that we're going to have but an hour of testimony from those two witnesses.
All right, then we'll adjourn for the day. Is there any comment from the defense?
No, that's fine. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you. We'll adjourn for the day. We'll reconvene at 9 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, y'all, that was day 11. That was day 11. We're going to get into day 12 on Wednesday, okay? All right, so I appreciate y'all joining me for today's live. I know this stuff is long and tedious with these cops and, you know, profiles and all that stuff. It's a lot, but I appreciate y'all joining me and supporting the live. Unless y'all got any questions, we're going to get out of here. Y'all make sure y'all hit that thumbs up if you hadn't already done so. If you're watching the replay, please hit the thumbs up. And I'll see y'all later on today. Don't know what time. Don't even know if I'm coming back tonight or not, but of course we'll be over in state land later. I might or might not. I don't know yet. But anywho, I love you guys. I appreciate y'all. Be safe out there. Y'all be safe, be blessed, never stressed. And with that, I'll see y'all tomorrow. Tomorrow is gonna be earlier. Yeah, I slept in today. Had a long weekend, so I slept in today, but we're gonna start earlier tomorrow. All right, y'all. Love y'all. See y'all later.
Way back now, access my regular. I'm talking access my better now. Oh, access my better now. Oh, way back now, access my regular. I'm talking access my better now. Oh, I see.